Hey there, and welcome back. Settle yourself down, however you are lying tonight, and let the day you have had begin to loosen and fall away from you. This is one of those evenings made for traveling without moving, for being carried off down a dark road to a place where the fire is already lit and a stranger arriving wet and weary out of the night is taken in without a single question asked. It is for anyone who has ever wished, at the end of a long day, simply to find a warm room with the lamp in the window and a place by the hearth kept for them. I would like to take you to such a place tonight, far back in time, to an alehouse standing alone on an old road in medieval England on a wild, wet night. At the very hour when the last light fails and the travellers still on the road begin to fear they will not find shelter before the dark closes wholly over them. Come with me if you are ready. Then let go of this century, thread by thread, and come back with me down a muddy highway 600 years ago, toward a low thatched house with a bush hung over its door and a red glow leaking from its shutters, where an alewife is even now stirring the pot and listening over the wind with the sound of feet on the road. Before we step in out of the dark, let me say my one word to you here, in the warm of your own night, because this is the only time I will. If these long journeys down old roads into other centuries are something you would like to keep finding their way to you, the surest way is to subscribe, so that the next lit window is already waiting for you on the evening you most need it. And tell me, in a word below, where in the world you are listening from tonight, and what the hour has become where you are, whether it is full dark already or only dimming toward evening. Because part of the deep comfort of an alehouse on a wild night is exactly this: the slow arrival of strangers from far apart, each one come a different road, each one carrying news of somewhere else, all of them gathering toward the one fire. You are one more traveller arriving tonight from further away than any of them could imagine, and I am glad of your company on the road. I read what you leave, and I answer when I can. That is the whole of it. Now let us get in, out of the wet. Picture this. You have been walking or riding for hours and the day is gone. The road beneath you is not a road as you would know one, but an old way worn into the land over centuries, deep-rutted, churned to mud by the autumn rains, running between high banks and dripping hedges and the black shapes of trees that lean over it and shake their last leaves down on you as the wind takes them. The light went out of the sky some while ago, and what is left is the grey-black of a wet night with no moon, so that the road ahead is barely a paleness between the dark hedges. And you are picking your way as much by feel as by sight, cold to the bone, wet through your feet, heavy with the clinging mud. There is no sound but the wind in the hedges and the steady hiss of the rain, and somewhere off in the distance, the call of an owl. And then, as the road bends, you see it. Ahead and a little below you, where the way dips toward a ford, there is a light. Not a bright light. A low red-gold glow, broken into bars by the shutters it leaks through, warm against all that cold wet dark, and beside it, swinging in the wind, the shape of a bush hung high on a pole. The ale stake, the sign, known to every traveller on every road in the land, that here is an alehouse, here is ale, here is a fire and a roof and shelter from the night. And something in your chest loosens at the sight of it, the oldest relief there is. Let me tell you, while you walk the last stretch toward that light, what kind of place you are coming to, and why it matters so much on a night like this. This is England a long time ago, 6 centuries and more before your own time, in the high medieval years when most people lived their whole lives within a few miles of the place they were born, and the roads between the towns were long and lonely and not always safe. Travel, in this world, is a hard and chancy business. There are no maps to speak of, no signposts, no inns at tidy intervals laid on for the comfort of the traveller. There are the old roads, some of them laid down by the Romans 1,000 years before and worn ever since. And along them, here and there, wherever a village sits, or a ford must be crossed, or a day's walk happens to end, there are houses where ale is brewed and sold, where a traveller may buy a drink and a bite, and, if the night has caught them out, a place to lie down till morning. An alehouse is not a grand thing. More often than not, it is simply a house, a family's own house, where the woman of the place brews good ale and hangs out the bush to say so, and opens her door to whoever the road brings. But to a traveller benighted in the rain, that ordinary house is the most welcome sight in all the world. And that is the thing I want you to feel as you come down the last of the dark road toward the glowing shutters. You have made it. Whatever the day has been, however long the road, you are not going to spend this night out, in the wet and in the danger. There is a fire ahead, and a roof, and ale, and the company of other souls who have also come in off the road, and a woman who will take you in. The medieval traveller approaching a lit alehouse on a wild night felt a relief we have very nearly lost the shape of, we who can be warm and dry and fed at the turn of a key or the touch of a switch. They knew what the night could do to a person caught out in it, and so the light in the alehouse window was not merely pleasant, it was rescue. It was the difference, sometimes, between a hard night and a deadly one. Let us go the last few steps toward it now. You and I, down the muddy dip toward the ford, toward the swinging bush and the red gold light, toward the low door under the dripping thatch, and let us knock and lift the latch and step in out of the dark. You lift the latch and push the heavy door against the wind and step down, for the floor inside is lower than the road, and the door swings to behind you and shuts the night out with a suddenness that takes your breath. And for a moment, you simply stand there, just inside, dripping, blinking, while your senses catch up with the change. The warmth comes first, rolling over your cold, wet face like something solid. Then the light, low and red and golden, after the long blindness of the dark road. Then the smells, all at once, the sweet thickness of wood smoke, and the malty richness of brewing ale, and the savour of something in a pot, and the close warm smell of damp wool and people, the smell of a room full of bodies drying out by a fire. And then the sound, the low burr of voices that fell quiet for half a heartbeat when the door opened and the wind blew in, and now picks up again, and somewhere a dog that lifted its head and has laid it down once more. Let your eyes find the shape of the room while you stand and drip. It is low and small and dim, a single room, the main room of the house, with a floor of beaten earth strewn with rushes, and walls of timber and daub gone dark with smoke, and a ceiling so low that a tall man must mind his head against the blackened beams. The fire is the heart of it, burning on a raised hearth against the far wall, or in the open middle of the floor in the old way. A good fire of wood, for there are trees enough in this country, throwing its red light out across the room and its smoke up toward the rafters and the hole or the smoke bay that lets it out. Around the fire and along the walls are the furnishings of the place, which are few and plain and well worn. A trestle table or two with benches, a settle with a high back set to catch the warmth and keep off the draught. A few stools, a barrel or two standing on end. There is nothing fine here, nothing that a great house would not throw away. But it is warm, and it is dry, and it is light, and after the road, it is the most beautiful room you have ever stood in. And here she is, the woman of the place, the alewife, come round the end of the table at the sound of the door, wiping her hands on her apron and looking you over in the firelight. And I want you to meet her properly, because she is the soul of this house and the reason it is what it is. She is not young and not old, a woman of middle years, broad and capable, her sleeves pushed up her strong forearms, her face flushed from the fire and the work, her eyes quick and shrewd and not unkind. She has run this house and brewed its ale for years, and there is very little that can come through that door on a wild night that she has not seen before, and nothing at all that she cannot handle. She takes one look at you, soaked and shivering, and a stranger, and she does not ask your name or your business or your money. Those can wait. She jerks her head toward the fire and says the words that every alewife on every road has said to each traveller, blown in out of the dark since the beginning of roads, words that mean simply, get you into the fire. You are wet through, come and get warm. And she turns back to her pot and leaves you to it. And that brusque, unceremonious welcome is worth more to you just now than any fine speech in the world. For brewing ale, you should understand, is women's work in this age, and the alewife is a figure known in each village and on every road. It is the wife of the house who brews, as part of the ordinary round of the household. The way she bakes the bread and salts the meat, and when she has brewed more than her own family needs, or brewed a batch especially to sell, she hangs the bush out over the door, the ale stake, to tell the world that there is fresh ale to be had within, and the neighbours come, and the travellers stop, and for a while her house is an alehouse. Some women do it now and again when they have a good brewing to sell. Some, like this one, do it always, their house an alehouse the year round, a fixed and known stopping place on the road. The ale she makes is her own, brewed by her own hands to her own knowledge, and it will be better or worse than the alewife's down the road according to her skill, and she is justly proud of it. And you are about to taste it. But first, the fire. Go to it then, the way she told you, and do not be shy of it, for the fire in an alehouse belongs to whoever is cold, and there is always room made at it for one more come in off the road. The others draw aside a little to let you in, with the rough, easy courtesy of travellers who were all, not long ago, as wet and cold as you are now. You find a place on the bench by the hearth, or a stool drawn close, and you hold out your hands to the blaze, and you feel the heat begin its slow work, soaking first into your stiff cold fingers, then into your hands, then up your arms, while the steam begins to rise off your wet cloak and your wet hair, and you start, by slow degrees, to come back to life. There is no feeling in all the world quite like the first few minutes, by a good fire, after a long, cold, wet road. The almost painful tingling return of the warmth, the smell of your own clothes drying, the deep animal gratitude of the body for heat and shelter. Sit with it a while. Let it soak into you. You have all the night ahead, and the worst of the day is behind you now. Shut out beyond the door, with the wind and the rain. You are in. You are warm. You are safe. The alehouse has you now. When the worst of the cold has gone out of you, the alewife comes back and sets down before you a vessel of her ale, and this is the thing you came in for. The thing the bush over the door promised. So let me tell you what it is, because the ale of this age is not quite the drink you know by the name. It is served in a cup or a mazer of wood, or a jug of rough pottery, or a horn, for there is little glass here, and what there is belongs to the rich. And the ale itself is not the clear, pale, bitter drink of a later time, for there are no hops in it. Hops have not yet come to England, or are only just beginning to, far away and not here, and so this is unhopped ale, brewed of malted barley and water and yeast and nothing else. Thick and slightly sweet and cloudy. more like a thin, nourishing broth of grain than the sharp, clear stuff of your own day. It does not keep. It must be drunk within a few days of the brewing, before it sours, and so it is always being brewed afresh. And the ale you are drinking tonight was very likely made in this house within the week. Let me take you, in your mind, to the back of the house where she makes it, because the brewing is the craft on which this whole place stands. It begins with the barley, which is malted first, that is, let to sprout in the damp, and then dried, to turn its hardness into sweetness. The malt is ground, and then it is mashed, steeped in hot water in the great brewing vat. The water drawn off and fresh added, again and again, until all the sweetness of the grain has passed into the liquid, which is now called the wort. The wort is boiled, and then cooled, and then set to work with the yeast. The living balm saved from the last brewing, and over a day or two it ferments quietly, bubbling in the warm, turning from sweet wort into ale. It is skilled work and chancy, for a brewing can go wrong, can sour, can fail to work, and a good alewife is one whose ale comes right batch after batch, year after year, and whose neighbours and whose travellers know that the bush over her door is a promise that will be kept. The smell of all this, the malt and the wort and the working balm, is the deep background smell of the whole house, soaked into its very timbers, the smell that mixed with the wood smoke to meet you at the door. So taste it. It is cool and thick and cloudy and faintly sweet, with a soft graininess to it and only the gentlest edge of sourness. And it is, in this age, food as much as drink. This is worth dwelling on, because it changes how you understand the whole room. Ale is not, here, a thing drunk only for pleasure or for getting drunk. It is a staple of the daily diet, drunk by everyone, by children and by the old, at every meal and through the day, because it is made of grain and carries real nourishment, and because the water, drawn from rivers and ponds and shallow wells, is often not safe, while ale, boiled in the making. The ale of every day is small ale, weak stuff, barely enough to feel the ordinary drink of the household. What you are given tonight, as a traveller paying for it, may be a little stronger. The good ale, the better brew. But even so, this is not a place of drunkenness. For the most part, it is a place of ordinary people, drinking the ordinary drink of their lives, made better than they could make it at home, by a fire, in company, at the end of a hard day. And now the food, for you have not eaten since who knows when, and the alewife, seeing it in your face, brings you something from the pot. It will not be much, and it will not be fine, but it will be hot. And on this night that is everything. There is pottage, almost certainly. For pottage is the thing that simmers in the pot on every hearth in this land from one year's end to the next. A thick soup stew of oats or barley and whatever vegetables the season gives, onions and leeks and cabbage and beans and peas, flavoured with a little salt meat or bacon if the house runs to it, and with herbs from the garden, cooked long and slow until it is thick enough to stand a spoon in. It is the great everyday food of medieval England, the food that fed almost everyone almost always, and a bowl of it hot from the fire on a cold, wet night is as comforting a thing as has ever been eaten. There is bread to go with it, dark and heavy, of barley or rye or muslin, the mixed grain of the poorer table, to be torn and dipped. There may be cheese, hard and sharp. And that is supper, and you eat it with the deep, uncomplicated hunger of the cold and the tired. And it is, in its plain way, one of the best meals of your life. Watch the alewife as she moves about her work, ladling pottage, drawing ale, tending the fire, exchanging a word here and a word there, and you will see that she runs this whole small world with an easy, unflustered command. Nothing escapes her. She knows who has paid, and who has not, who has had enough and who may have more. Which of the travellers is sound, and which to keep an eye on, when to be brisk and when to be kind. This is her house and her fire and her ale and her night, and she holds it all in her two capable hands without ever seeming to try. There were a great many such women in this age, women who brewed and sold and ran these small houses of welcome up and down every road in the land, and they are mostly nameless now, lost out of the record. But they were the keepers of one of the kindest institutions the age had, the warm-lit door open to the stranger on the dark road. You are sitting by one of their fires now, fed and warming, and you owe her, this nameless, capable woman, the whole comfort of your night. Lift your cup to her and drink and settle deeper into the warmth, for the room is filling and there is company to meet. Now lift your eyes from the fire and look about you at the others who have come in off the road tonight, because this is the particular magic of an alehouse, and the thing that no private house and no fine inn of a later age could ever quite give. Here, in this one small warm room, the road has gathered a handful of strangers who would never otherwise have met, people of different trades and different places and different stations, thrown together for one night by the simple fact of being on the same road in the same rain, and made, for a few hours, into a single company around a single fire. By morning they will scatter again, each their own way, and never meet again in their lives. But tonight they are here together, and there is a warmth in that, a particular fellowship of the road, that is one of the oldest and best things human beings have ever made. Let me introduce you to them, one by one, the way you would come to know them across the evening, by watching and listening from your place by the hearth. Nearest the fire, in the best place, with the steam still rising off him, is the carter, and he has the look of a man who has fought the road all day and won, but only just. He is a big, slow, heavy man, mud to the knees, his hands cracked and huge, and he is the one who brought the great creaking wagon that stands now in the yard under the lean-to. The wagon and the patient weary oxen, or the heavy horses that he has seen fed and watered and sheltered before ever he saw to himself, because that is the carter's way and the carter's pride. He hauls goods along these roads for his living, wool perhaps, or cloth, or barrels, or grain, the heavy, slow freight of the country moving from where it is made to where it is wanted. And he knows this road, and every road like it, as well as he knows his own hands. Every rut and ford and bad hill and boggy stretch, each alehouse, and every place where it is wise not to stop after dark. He says little, the carter, but what he says is worth hearing, for he carries the news of the whole road in his head, who is on it and what is moving, and where the trouble is, and the others lean in when he speaks. Tonight he is mostly silent, easing his great body by the fire, content his day's haul safe in the yard, his beasts fed, his ale in his hand. Across from him, fussing over a great bundle that he will not let out of his sight, is the chapman, the peddler, the travelling seller of small things, and he is everything the carter is not. Quick and talkative and sharp-eyed. A little man, with a clever face, who lives by his wits and his tongue. His whole shop is on his back, or in the pack he has set down so carefully against the wall. And it is a wonder, that pack, when he opens it, as he surely will before the night is out. For there is no surer way to a traveller's heart than the showing of small bright things on a dark night. He carries the things that the villages cannot make for themselves, and the country folk so rarely see, needles and pins and thread, ribbons and laces, cheap brooches and buckles, little knives, combs of bone, beads, a few trinkets that catch the firelight. A packet of spices, perhaps, or a holy badge from some shrine, or a sheet of a ballad. He goes from village to village and fair to fair the whole year round, carrying his little hoard of marvels, and he knows everyone and everything, all the gossip of a whole countryside, who is to be married and who has died, and what the harvest was like 3 valleys over. He is already talking, the chapman, drawing the others out, for talk is half his trade, and where he sits, the evening gathers and warms. There is a fine thread of suspicion the country folk hold toward a chapman, it must be said, for a man who comes from nowhere and goes to nowhere, who lives by buying cheap and selling dear, who has the smooth tongue and the quick eye, is not quite to be trusted, and many a chapman has earned the doubt. But there is also a great gladness at his coming, for he is the bringer of small wonders and large news, the thread that ties the scattered villages to the wider world, and a winter evening is the brighter for his arrival. Tonight he is in good humour, his pack sold down light, his profit made, and he repays the company's welcome, the only way he knows, with talk a stream of it, news and rumour, and tales of the road and the fair. Half of it true, and all of it entertaining, while the firelight glints on the row of pins in his lapel, and the others listen and laugh, and now and again glance, despite themselves, toward the fat pack against the wall, and wonder what marvels are folded up inside it. Let him talk. There is no better music for the early part of a tavern night than the patter of a clever chapman, warming to his audience. And you, the newest arrival, the strangest traveller of them all, can sit back in the warmth and let it wash over you, and watch the company knit itself together around the fire. In the settle against the far wall, a little apart from the fire, sit 2 more of tonight's company, and these are pilgrims, and they bring a different note into the room, quieter and graver, and touched with something far off. You will know them by their dress and their gear, for the pilgrim has a look all his own. They wear the long plain travelling gowns and the broad hats turned up at the brim, and they carry the staff, the stout walking stick that is the pilgrim's third leg on the hard miles, and the scrip, the satchel for bread and a few coins, and on hat or breast they wear the badges of the shrines they have already visited, little signs of pewter or lead, a scallop shell, an ampulla, a small stamped image, each one bought at a holy place and worn ever after as a sign of the journey made. To read a pilgrim's badges is to read the map of their devotion, the long roads they have walked to the tombs of the saints, and these 2 have walked far, by the look of them, and have far yet to go. They are bound, perhaps, for one of the great shrines of the land, for the bones of a saint that draw the faithful from every corner of the country, to pray for a sickness healed, or a sin forgiven, or a soul in purgatory eased, or simply out of the deep desire, common to this whole age, to stand in a holy place and be for a moment nearer to heaven. Pilgrimage is one of the great currents of medieval life, and the roads are full of it. The pious and the penitent and the merely restless, all walking the long miles together, and the alehouses and the inns along the pilgrim roads do much of their trade by it. These 2 are weary, their feet are sore, their gowns are heavy with the rain, and they have come gladly in out of the night, like everyone else. And they sit now with their ale and their quiet talk, a little set apart, their staffs leaned in the corner, their eyes often on the fire. There is a peace about them, the peace of people who have given themselves over to a long single purpose and need think of nothing else but the next day's walking. Later, if the company asks, they may tell of the shrines they have seen, the wonders, the miracles, the great churches blazing with candles, and the room will fall quiet to hear it. For these are people who have been to the holy places, and a little of that holiness travels with them. And then there is the friar, and he is a figure of his own, neither quite of the church as the parish priest is of it, nor quite a layman, a man of one of the orders of friars who, unlike the monks shut up in their abbeys, go out into the world among the people, preaching and begging their bread. He wears the habit of his order, grey or black or white, according to which brotherhood he belongs to, tied with a cord, and he carries little, for the friars are sworn to poverty and own nothing, living on what they are given. He has come in tonight like the rest, and the alewife has given him a bowl of pottage and a cup of ale for nothing, or for a blessing. For it is accounted a good and pious thing to feed a friar. And he takes it as his due with an easy practised humility. He is good company, the friar, for the friars are great talkers and travellers, learned after their fashion, full of tales and sermons and scraps of Latin, and they know how to work a room, how to turn talk to edification, and back to laughter, and round again. Whether this particular one is a holy man living truly by his vows, or one of the worldly sort the age was full of, fat and sly and fonder of a good supper than of poverty, you cannot yet tell, and perhaps it does not greatly matter tonight. He has a store of tales and a good voice, and the company is glad of him, and that is enough. So look at the room now, and at the company the road has gathered into it, for it is a true cross-section of the whole travelling world of this age. The carter, the heavy, honest backbone of the road's trade. The chapman, the quick, bright bringer of small things and large gossip. The pilgrims, grave and far-travelled, carrying their devotion and their badges. The friar, learned and worldly and full of talk. And around and among them, the others, who drift in and out of an alehouse on a country night, of whom more in a moment. They are strangers to one another, everyone, and yet watch how in the warmth and the ale and the firelight they begin to soften toward each other, to share, to talk across the gaps of trade and station that would keep them apart anywhere else. The road levels people. A wet night and a shared fire level them further. By the deep of the night, these strangers will be something not far from friends, bound by the oldest bond there is, the bond of having sheltered together from the same dark. And you are one of them. Now, the strangest stranger of all, come the longest road, and there is a place for you too in the warm gathering circle. Settle into it. The night is young, and the company is good, and the fire is high. Not everyone in the room tonight is a traveller, and I want you to notice the others, the local folk. The men of the nearby village who have walked up through the rain to the alehouse, as they do most evenings, because they are the steady heart of the place around which the travellers are only passing weather. An alehouse on a road is two things at once. It is a shelter for strangers. Yes, but it is also, and more deeply, the gathering place of its own little neighbourhood. The one warm public room the village has, where the men come of an evening to drink the alewife's good ale and sit by a better fire than they can keep at home and talk over the day and the season and the doings of the parish. They are here tonight, as they are most nights, 2 or 3 of them, husbandmen, men who work the land, their faces and hands telling the story of a life spent out of doors in all weathers. And they have their own places by the fire, their own settled way of being here, and they look on the travellers with friendly curiosity, glad of the new faces and the new news, for a stranger in the alehouse is the evening's entertainment. These village men carry the deep, slow knowledge of one place that the travellers, for all their wide wandering, can never have. They know this stretch of road and this ford and these fields the way you know the rooms of your own house, know them through their fathers and their grandfathers back beyond memory. They know who farms what, and who owes what, and who has quarrelled with whom, the whole dense web of a small community where everyone has known everyone all their lives. And they know the alewife, of course, and tease her, and are teased back with the easy roughness of old acquaintance. For she is one of their own, the village's brewer, and her house is the village's hearth. When the talk turns as it will, to the wider world, to the news the chapman brings, and the shrines the pilgrims have seen, and the far places the carter's road runs to. These rooted men listen with the particular hunger of people who will likely never go more than a day's walk from where they sit, drinking in the wide world through the words of those who have seen it, and then going home through the rain to their own beds and their own narrow known acres, content. And then, late in the gathering, when the room is full and warm and the ale has gone round more than once, there comes the best arrival of all. For the door opens and the wind blows in, and on the threshold, shaking the rain from his cloak, stands the minstrel. You will know him by the thing he carries, the instrument in its wrapping, held close and dry against his body all through the wet road, for it is his living and his treasure both. He may carry a harp or a fiddle, the bowed instrument, the age called by other names, or a lute, or simply a pipe and a small drum, or nothing but his own trained voice and his memory stocked with 100 songs and tales. He is a wanderer like the chapman, going where the people gather, to the fairs and the feasts and the great houses, and on a night like this, to a wayside alehouse where a warm welcome and a free supper and a place by the fire can always be earned by a man who can sing. The room brightens at the sight of him. The alewife waves him to the fire, and everyone, the carter and the chapman and the pilgrims and the friar and the village men and you, feels the evening lift. For now there will be music, but not yet. He is wet and cold and hungry like everyone else, and the music is the better for the waiting, so let him thaw by the fire first and take his ale and his pottage. And let the room go back for a while to its talk, which is the true substance of a tavern night and the thing the music will only crown. For an evening in a place like this is built of talk above all, the long winding firelit talk of people with nowhere else to be and the whole night before them. And I want to take you into it now, into the rhythm and the substance of it, because it is one of the things our own age has most nearly lost and most needs to remember. Lean back on your bench, with the warmth of the fire on your face, and the good ale in your hand, and your supper warm inside you, and your clothes steaming gently dry, and let the talk of the room close over you, and listen. The talk of an alehouse moves in a way all its own, and once you have the rhythm of it, you could listen to it half the night, as indeed the company means to. It is not the brittle, quick talk of people performing for one another. It is slow and circular and easy. The talk of people who have the whole evening and no need to hurry, who will say a thing and let it sit, and come back to it and turn it over, with long companionable silences in between, where the only sound is the fire and the rain and the creak of a bench. It begins, as tavern talk always begins, with the weather and the road, the safest and most necessary subjects, the state of the fords and the badness of the hills, and whether the rain will hold all night or blow through by morning. The carter has the last word on all of it, for he has been out in it all day, and the others defer to him. From the road and the weather, the talk moves outward, as the ale loosens it, to the news. And news, in this age, is a precious and uncertain thing, for there are no papers and no posts, and a thing that happens in one part of the country may take weeks or months to be known in another. Carried by just such travellers as these, passed mouth to mouth along the roads, growing and changing as it goes. So the company trades its news like the treasure it is. The chapman has the most of it, and the freshest, for news is half his trade, and he doles it out with relish. The doings of the towns, the price of wool, a great man's death, a scandal at a fair, a rumour of war or of sickness, somewhere far off. The carter adds what he has heard along his road. The pilgrims tell of the country they have walked through, the harvests they have seen, the talk at the shrines. The village men listen and marvel and now and again correct a point or add a local echo. And slowly, out of all these scraps and rumours brought from all these different roads, the company assembles between them, a kind of picture of the wider world beyond the dark, wet circle of the firelight. A world they are each a small part of, and none of them can see whole. And then there are the tales, which are different from the news, for the tales are not meant to be believed, only enjoyed. Every traveller carries a stock of them, the strange things seen and the stranger things heard, and a tavern fire on a wet night draws them out one after another. There are tales of the road, of robbers and of narrow escapes, of strange travellers met and never explained. They tell of marvels, of monstrous beasts in far countries, of holy miracles and unholy hauntings, of the doings of kings and the follies of the great, most of it at third or fourth hand, and none the worse for that. There are the old stories, the ones everyone half knows, that a good teller can make new again. The friar has a store of them, pointed always towards some moral, and the chapman has a store with no moral at all. And between the two of them, the evening fills with story, and the company leans in, and the firelight works on the faces, and the dark and the rain are quite forgotten. What strikes you, listening from your place by the fire, is how much these people are to one another in this moment, and how little they were an hour ago. They came in strangers, wet and weary and apart, each wrapped in their own cold and their own road. And now with the warmth and the ale and the talk, the walls between them have come down, and they are a company, leaning toward one another across the trestle, laughing at the chapman's wit, hushing for the friar's tale, drawing the silent carter out, making room in the circle for each new voice. There is a kind of love in it, the rough, quick love of strangers who will part at dawn, the love that asks nothing and gives warmth freely for one night and lets go without grief in the morning. It is one of the kindest things human beings do, this gathering of strangers into a temporary fellowship around a fire, and it is very, very old, older than this alehouse, older than these roads, as old as the first time cold travellers shared a fire in the dark. You are inside it tonight. Let it hold you. And notice too the silences, for they matter as much as the talk. A tavern night is not all chatter. There are long, easy lulls when no one speaks at all, when the talk has wound down of its own accord and the company simply sits, each in their own thoughts, gazing into the fire, listening to the rain, content in the shared warmth without any need to fill it with words. These are not awkward silences. They are the deep, comfortable silences of people at ease in one another's company. The silences that only come when the talk has done its work and the strangers have become, for a while, a fellowship. The fire settles. Someone sighs. The rain drums on. A log is laid on and sends up its shower of sparks. And then, after a while, someone speaks again, and the talk picks up where it left off, and winds on through the night. Let yourself drift in those silences. They are the truest rest the evening has to give, and they are leading you gently by slow stages toward the sleep that waits at the end of the night. When the talk has had its first long run and the cups are filled again, the games begin, for an alehouse is a place of play as much as of talk, and the long evenings were filled, in this age before any of the amusements we know, with the simple old games that need nothing but a board, or a few counters, or a pair of dice, or only the quickness of one's own wits. Watch the corner where the chapman and one of the village men have fallen to playing, for there is a small drama in every game, and the watching of it is half the pleasure for those not playing. The dice come out first, as they always do, for dice are the readiest game there is, needing nothing but themselves and a flat place to throw, and they are everywhere in this age, in every alehouse and camp and guardroom in the land. They are small, these dice, cut from bone, and not always honest, for the loaded die and the cogged die are old tricks, and a wary man watches a stranger's dice with care. The games are simple, games of chance with a little reckoning in them, played for small stakes, a coin or two, a round of ale, some trifle from the chapman's pack. There is a quickening in the room when the dice come out, a leaning in, a holding of breath at the throw, a groan or a crow at the fall, for even the smallest stake is enough to sharpen the pleasure. And the rise and fall of luck at the dice is an old delight that needs no great wager to make it sweet. The friar, you may notice, looks on with a face that cannot quite decide between disapproval and longing, for the church frowns on dicing, and the friars are sworn to better things. But a game is a game, and the firelight is warm, and his foot is tapping. Then there is the board game, the game of tables, the old ancestor of the game a later age would call backgammon, played on a board marked in points with counters, moved according to the throw of the dice. A game of luck and skill mixed, old as the Romans and beloved through all the medieval centuries. Two of the company settle to it, the board between them on the trestle, and a small ring of watchers gathers, for tables is a slow savouring game, full of reversals, and a watcher may take as much pleasure in it as a player. There is the click of the counters, and the rattle of the dice in the cup, and the long pondering over a move, and the sudden stroke that turns the game. And the watchers murmur and advise, and are told to hold their tongues. And the ale goes round, and the hours slide by unnoticed. Somewhere a simpler board has been scratched, perhaps, for one of the racing or chasing games, played with a handful of pegs or pebbles, the games that need no fine board at all. Only a few lines drawn on a bench and whatever counters come to hand, the games that children play, and grown folk too when the evening is long. And weaving through it all are the games of words, the riddles and the catches and the contests of wit, which need no board or die at all, and are perhaps the oldest games of all. The medieval world loved a riddle, the cleverer and the more teasing the better, and a good riddle put to the room would set everyone guessing and arguing, and the one who knew the answer hugging it gleefully until the rest gave up. There are riddles old as the language, riddles whose answers are a key, an onion, a candle, the wind, a year, an egg, sly and poetic and surprising, and the room turns them over with delight. And the friar offers a learned one, and the chapman a bawdy one, and the village men, the homely old ones, their grandfathers taught them. There are tongue twisters and rhyming games, and the long memory games where each must add a line and repeat all that went before, breaking down at last into laughter when someone's memory fails. None of it costs anything. None of it needs anything but the people in the room and the wit between them, and it fills the warm hours wonderfully, the laughter rising and the fire burning down, and the rain forgotten beyond the shutters. It is worth pausing on, this richness of play made out of almost nothing, because it tells you something true about this age, and gently reproaches our own. These people have no books to speak of, and most cannot read them in any case. They have no pictures on a screen, no music but what they make themselves, no amusement that does not come out of their own company and their own wits, and a few simple old things, a die, a board, a riddle, a song. And yet the evening does not drag. It is full of laughter and contest and pleasure, made entirely by the people in the room out of their own resources. The way human beings made their evenings for all the long ages before the machines came to make them for us. There is a self-sufficiency in it, a completeness that is its own kind of wealth. They want for nothing, this firelit company, to make a good night of it. They have ale and a fire and each other, and that, it turns out, is plenty. has always been plenty, was plenty for 10,000 years. Sit among them and feel the plenty of it. The warm, full sufficiency of a room full of people making their own joy out of next to nothing on a wild night. And now the minstrel is warm and fed, and reaching for his instrument, and the games are setting aside. And the room is hushing, for the music is about to begin. The minstrel has thawed by the fire and eaten his fill, and now he unwraps the thing he has carried so carefully through the rain. And the room settles of itself, the dice put away, the talk dropping to nothing, the faces turning toward him. For the coming of music into a firelit room is a kind of small holiness that even the roadiest company falls quiet to honour. He tunes the instrument, whatever it is, the harp or the fiddle or the lute, with the unhurried care of a man who knows the worth of the waiting, plucking and turning and listening, and the little sounds of the tuning are themselves a pleasure, a promise of what is coming. And then he begins. He begins, as a good minstrel always does, with something the room knows, a tune everyone has heard, a song with a chorus they can join. For the surest way to win a roomful of strangers is to make them sing together. And so the first song is a round, or a catch, or a well-loved old ballad with a refrain. And one voice takes it up, and then another. The chapmen lustily, the village men in their rough true country voices, the pilgrims more softly, even the silent carter rumbling along under his breath, until the whole room is singing, badly and gladly, the firelight on the open mouths and the laughing eyes, and the song fills the small space and pushes the dark and the rain a little further off. There is nothing in the world quite like the sound of a room full of ordinary people singing together for the pleasure of it. No skill required, no audience but themselves. The old song carrying them all along together, it is one of the things human beings were made for and have nearly forgotten. And on this night, in this room, it is alive and well. Then, when the singing has had its run and the room is warm with it, the minstrel changes key and plays the thing he is really here to play, the long-tail song, the ballad that tells a story, and now the room goes truly quiet. For this is the old heart of the minstrel's art. He has many of them by heart, these long story songs, stocked in his memory as the chapman's pack is stocked with pins, and he chooses one to suit the night. A tale of love or of battle or of marvel, of a knight and his lady, of an outlaw in the greenwood, of a ghost come back, of a hero's long faithfulness or his great betrayal. He sings it in the old way, the verses rolling out one after another to the same returning tune, the story unfolding slow, and the room follows it spellbound, carried out of the alehouse altogether into the green world or the field of battle or the haunted hall of the song. A child, if there is one, has crept close to listen. The pilgrims have set down their cups. Even the alewife has paused in her work, a jug in her hand, her face softened, listening. This is what the minstrel carries from house to house and road to road, this power to take a roomful of tired strangers and lift them clean out of their weariness and their wet and set them down inside a story, all together. For the length of a song, and last, as the night deepens and the fire burns low, he plays the slow airs, the tunes without words, or the songs so old and so sad that the words hardly matter. And these are the ones that will follow you down into sleep. There is a particular music to this age, plaintive and modal and strange to a modern ear, that seems to hold in it all the sweetness and all the sorrow of these short, hard lives. And when the minstrel plays it low by the dying fire, with the company quiet around him and the rain soft on the thatch, Something happens in the room that is deeper than entertainment. The faces grow still and inward. A man wipes his eyes and does not care who sees. The far places and the lost people and the old griefs that everyone carries come close in the firelight and are honoured and are eased by the music that speaks for them better than any words. This is what music was before it could be bought and stored and played at a touch, a thing made by one person for the people in the room. On this one night, never quite the same again, alive in the moment and then gone. Let it work on you too, lying where you are. Let the old plaintive tune of a medieval night fill the dark behind your eyes. The minstrel plays on, low and slow, and the company is quiet, and the fire sinks, and the long night turns, gently, toward its rest. Let me take you, for a little while, out of the warm room and into the great dark that surrounds it, because half the sweetness of an alehouse on a wild night comes from the knowledge of what waits beyond its walls, the world the latch and the shutters are holding off. So let your mind go up, out through the smoke hole, into the wet black air above the thatch, and look down on where you are, the way no traveller in that age could ever look, but the way it deepens the comfort to imagine. Below you, the alehouse is a single point of warmth in a vast cold dark, its red light leaking from the shutters, its smoke torn away on the wind, the ale stake swinging black above the door. Around it, the country lies in a darkness more total than any you have known, for there is no light anywhere in all that land but fire, and fire is indoors and banked low for the night, so that the fields and the woods and the road itself are drowned in a blackness in which a person could not see their own hand before their face. The road that brought you, that pale thread between the hedges, has vanished utterly into the night. The ford below the house runs unseen, its water loud in the night. The village beyond is a huddle of black shapes, every house shut and dark, its people long abed. And beyond the village, the great dark country rolls away on every side, field and forest and waste and fen, mile upon mile of it, with here and there, far off, another single point of light where another house holds its own small fire against the same enormous night. It is not an empty dark to the people of this age, and it is not a safe one. The night belongs to other things than people. There are the beasts, the wolf still in the wilder country, the boar, the creatures that hunt. There are the practical dangers, the ditch to fall in, the river to drown in, the cold itself, which can kill a person caught out and lost on a bad night, and there are the dangers that walk on two legs. For the roads of this age are not safe after dark, and the lonely places between the towns are the haunt of robbers and masterless men, the desperate and the violent, who prey on the traveller benighted and alone. This is the deep reason the alehouse matters so, the deep root of the relief you felt at the sight of its light. To be inside behind a barred door, by a fire in company, is to be safe from all of it. The beasts and the ditches and the cold and the cutthroats for one night, and to be still out there, alone, on the road, is to be exposed to every one of them. The line between the two is the threshold you crossed an hour ago, and you crossed it just in time. There is more abroad in the night than wolves and robbers too, or so the people in the warm room firmly hold, and the dark beyond the shutters is peopled, for them, with things that no bar across the door can keep out. This is an age that believes, wholly and without embarrassment, in a world thick with unseen powers, and the night is their hour. There are the spirits of the dead, the unquiet ones, walking the places where they died. There are the things of the old belief that the church has never quite driven out, the fairies and the goblins and the shape-shifting things of hedge and water and barrow abroad and dangerous in the dark, not to be named too freely after nightfall. There are omens in the cry of a particular bird, in a knock, in a shape half seen. No one in the warm room would willingly go out alone into the night now, not for any ordinary reason, and not only for fear of robbers. The dark is full to them, and the fuller and the wilder it is, out there the dearer and the safer, the lit circle in here, the closer the gathered bodies, the more precious the simple fact of being inside and together and warm, with the latch down and the fire bright, and the whole vast haunted night shut out beyond the door. So come back down now, out of the black wet air, back through the smoke hole into the low red lit room, and feel the difference. The flood of relief as the warmth and the light and the company close around you again, after the great cold dark you have just imagined. This is the deepest pleasure the alehouse has to give, the pleasure of refuge, of shelter against a real and present danger, and it is a pleasure our own safe age has almost entirely lost the taste of. These travellers earned their warmth tonight, every one of them, with a hard wet day on a dangerous road, and they feel it as we can hardly feel anything, because they know exactly what it is keeping out. The fire is sweet, because the night is bitter. The room is dear, because the outside is wide and full of teeth. There is no warmth in all our centuries quite so warm as a fire, in a wayside alehouse on a wild medieval night, with the rain on the thatch and the robbers in the dark, and the whole haunted country held off beyond the barred and bolted door. Settle into it. You are on the right side of the threshold. The night cannot reach you here. Come back to the fire and the ale in your hand, and let me tell you a little more about the place itself and the woman who keeps it. Because the alehouse is woven into the life of this age in ways that the warm, easy evening does not show on its surface. It is a humble place, this, but it is not a lawless one, nor a thing apart from the ordered world. The ale that you are drinking, and the price you pay for it, and the very measure it is served in, are matters that the wider world takes a close interest in. For ale is the drink of the whole people, and the selling of it is watched. In the towns, and in many a country place too, there is an officer whose whole charge is the ale, and he is called the ale taster, or the ale conner, and his task is to go about among the brewers, and taste their ale, and judge whether it is good and wholesome, and sold at a fair price, and in an honest measure. The price of ale is fixed by law according to the price of grain, so that the alewife may not charge what she likes, and the measures she sells by are checked against the standard, and an alewife who brews bad ale, or sells short measure, or charges above the set price, may be brought before the court of the manor or the town, and fined for it. There is a whole apparatus of small regulation around this small trade, because the trade touches everyone, and the records of these courts are full of the names of alewives fined, year after year. So many of them that the fine came almost to be a kind of license, a regular cost of doing the business. Our alewife tonight knows all this in her bones. She brews good ale because her living and her good name depend on it, and because the conner will taste it, and because her neighbours, who are her customers, would know in a moment and tell everyone if she let her standard slip. And yet, for all the regulation, the alewife held an uneasy place in the eye of the age, and it is worth understanding why. For it tells you something of how this world saw a woman who ran her own trade and her own house, and dealt in drink, and kept company with travelling men. The moralists of the age were suspicious of her. They drew her, in their sermons and their carvings and their painted warnings, as a cheat who watered her ale and gave short measure, as a temptress who lured men to drink and idleness, sometimes as a figure of fun, and sometimes as something darker. A woman with too much freedom and too much tongue and too little master over her. It was the old suspicion that falls on any woman who stands a little outside the ordered roles, the wife under her husband, the daughter under her father, the nun under her rule. The alewife stood, often on her own, mistress of her own door, and the age did not quite know what to make of her. And so it watched her and taxed her and slandered her and could not do without her. The truth of most of them was far simpler and far kinder than the slander, hard-working women brewing honest ale and keeping a warm house. But the suspicion clung, and she would have known it clung and carried herself the more stoutly for it. So look at her again, our alewife, moving sure and unbothered about her warm, full room on this wild night, and see her for what she is, one of the great unsung keepers of this age's kindness. The church kept the shrines, and the great kept the castles, and the guilds kept the towns, but it was women like this one who kept the small lit door open on the dark road, who took in the stranger and warmed the traveller and fed the friar for a blessing and brewed the good ale that was half the comfort of the poor man's life. Her house is not in any chronicle, her name is in no record, but a fine in a manor court for selling ale a farthing dear. And yet she did more plain good in the world, this nameless woman and her 1,000 sisters up and down the roads, than many a name that history remembers, simply by keeping the fire lit and the door open and the ale good. Night after night, for whoever the dark road brought to her latch. You are warming at her fire and drinking her ale and sheltering under her thatch tonight, and the whole comfort of your night is her doing. There were tens of thousands like her, and they are all gone now and forgotten. And we owe them more than we know. Lift your cup to her once more, and drink her good ale, and let her keep you, as she has kept so many, safe and warm, through the wild night. The minstrel has set his instrument aside to rest his hands, and into the warm lull that follows, the talk turns, as it always does, at the deep of a tavern night, to the telling of tales, and now it is the friar's turn. For the company has been pressing him, and a friar is never long persuaded to talk. So let me sit you back on your bench with your cup refilled, and let the room hush a little, and let us listen with the rest, as the friar tells his tale. Because the telling of stories by a fire is among the oldest pleasures human beings have, and a wet night in a wayside alehouse, with the company gathered close and the dark held off, is the very place it was made for. He tells, as a friar will, a tale with a moral hidden in it, but he is too good a teller to let the moral spoil the story, and he wraps it in marvel and suspense the way a cook wraps a bitter pill in honey. It is a tale of the kind this age loved best, a tale of the testing of a soul, of a man brought to a hard choice, of pride brought low and humility raised up, of the strange workings of providence in the lives of ordinary people. There is a journey in it, and a stranger met on a road, who is more than he seems, as the strangers met on roads in such tales always are. There is a temptation, and a fall, and a long hard road back to grace. There are wonders along the way, a vision, a voice, a sign. And there is at the end the turn that the whole tale was bending toward, the moment when the proud man sees himself truly and is broken and remade, and the company, who saw it coming and wanted it none the less, lets out its breath together in satisfaction, for there is a deep pleasure in a tale that arrives where it ought to arrive, that gives the soul the shape it longs for. Watch the room as he tells it, for the watching is half the tale. The firelight moves on the listening faces, the pilgrims grave and nodding, the village men open-mouthed, the chapman for once silent, the carter still as stone, A log settles and no one stirs. The rain drums on the thatch, far off now, behind the world of the story. The friar's voice does the work, dropping low at the moments of dread so that the room leans in to catch it, swelling at the moments of wonder, falling soft and grave at the end. He is no scholar reading from a page. He is a teller, working a room in the old oral art that this whole age lived by, the art of the voice and the held breath and the perfectly timed turn. The art that needs no book and no light but the fire, and no stage but a circle of tired faces wanting to be carried somewhere, and he carries them. For the length of the tale, the alehouse is gone, and the wet road is gone, and the long day's weariness is gone, and the whole company is away inside the story, walking the road with the proud man, meeting the stranger, seeing the vision, coming home at last to grace. This is the thing I most want you to feel about a night like this. The way the people of this age made, out of nothing but their own voices and their own gathered company, the very escape we now reach for screens and machines to give us, the escape into story, the being carried out of ourselves and our own small troubles into a larger and a shapelier world. They had no other way to get it but this. The teller and the fire and the circle of listeners, and so they made the most of it, and grew skilled at it, and treasured the good teller as we treasure far lesser things. And there is something in their way that ours has lost. For the tale told by a living voice to a present company, on this one night, to these particular tired faces, is a warmer and a nearer thing than any story ever was that came out of a box. The friar tells it only to them, only tonight, shaping it as he goes to the room before him, and when it is done, it is gone, never to be told in just that way again, and that passing is part of its preciousness. Let the friar's voice carry you too, lying where you are, out of your own room and your own night, into the old shape of the testing and the fall and the long road home to grace. The tale winds toward its close, the room holds its breath, and the fire burns low. When the friar's tale is done and the cups are filled once more, the talk turns gently toward the two pilgrims in the settle. For the company is curious about them, as people always are about those who have set out on a long and holy journey, and one of the village men asks them, simply, where they are bound and where they have been. And so the pilgrims tell, quietly, in turn, and the room settles to listen. For there is a hush that falls of itself around the talk of holy places, even in a wayside alehouse, even among the worldly and the weary. They have been, they say, to the great shrines, and they name them. The famous holy places of the land where the bones of the saints lie, and the miracles are worked, and the pilgrims come in their thousands. They tell of the long roads walked to reach them, the weeks on foot, the company of fellow pilgrims gathered on the way, the songs sung to lighten the miles, the dangers and the kindnesses of the road. And they speak of the shrines themselves, and here their voices change, and the room leans in, for they are describing wonders that most of the company will never see. They describe the great church rising at the end of the journey, vast beyond anything in their own small world, its pillars like a forest of stone, its windows blazing with coloured glass that turns the daylight into jewels. They tell of the shrine itself, the tomb of the saint, golden and glittering with the gifts of centuries, ringed with the candles of the faithful, worn smooth by the lips and the hands of the countless pilgrims who have knelt there before. They tell of the press of the crowd, the sick brought on litters in hope of healing, the weeping and the praying, the sense, almost unbearable, of standing in a place where heaven and earth come very near. This is one of the great hungers of the age, this longing to go to the holy places, and it runs through every life in the room, even the lives of those who will never go. To make a pilgrimage is to step out of the ordinary round of life for a while and give oneself wholly to a single sacred purpose, to walk the long miles as a kind of prayer made with the whole body, to do penance for one's sins, to beg the saints' help for a sickness or a sorrow, to fulfill a vow made in some dark hour, or simply to satisfy the deep desire to stand once in a life in a truly holy place. The roads of this age are threaded everywhere with pilgrims, going and coming, the great shrines drawing them like rivers, running to the sea, and the alehouses and the hospices and the inns along the pilgrim ways are full of them, sharing their fires and their tales as these two share theirs tonight. There is something deeply human in it, this readiness to walk for weeks toward a holy place, this faith that the journey itself is worth the making, and even those in the room who are not pious, the chapman with his sharp eye to profit, the carter with his mind on his road, fall quiet and respectful before it, for they too feel, however dimly, the pull of the holy places and the worth of a soul that sets out toward them. And there is comfort in the pilgrim's tale. Beyond the wonder of it, a comfort that settles over the whole room as they speak. For the burden of this age is heavy, the work hard, the lives short, death always near, and the great shrines and the saints who dwell there are, to these people, a real and present help. A place to carry their griefs and their fears and lay them down. To hear that the holy places are there, that the saint's tomb still glitters, and the candles still burn, and the miracles still come, that heaven is still near, and may still be reached by a faithful soul who will walk the long road to it, is a deep reassurance on a dark night at the world's wet edge. The pilgrims have been there, they have knelt at the shrine. They carry a little of its holiness with them, in their badges, and their weary faces, and their quiet, certain voices, and the room is the warmer and the safer for their being in it, as though a thread of that far bright holiness had been carried in out of the dark, along with them, and laid down by the common fire. Let it warm you too, the thought of the bright shrines burning far off in the night, the saints keeping their watch, the long roads of the faithful winding toward them through the dark, and your own small alehouse, one more lit point on the great pilgrim map of a believing world, holding its travellers safe till morning. There are two more of tonight's company I have not yet brought you to, for the road gathers more than tradesmen and pilgrims, and these two sit a little back from the fire, and you might pass over them. But each has a story written in the way he holds himself, and the alehouse is the one place such stories get told. The first is a soldier, or a man who has been one, going home. You will know him by the hard economy of his movements, by the long knife at his belt, that is more weapon than tool, by a certain watchfulness that never quite leaves him even here by the warm fire. The habit of a man who has learned to sleep light and keep his back to a wall. He has been away at the wars, wherever the wars of this age are being fought, and now he is making his way home, down the long roads, toward a village and a family he has not seen in years and is not sure will know him. He says little of where he has been, and the company does not press him, for there is a thing in his face that asks to be let alone. And the others, who have all seen something of the world's hardness, respect it. He has coin, a little, the pay or the plunder of his soldiering, knotted carefully into his belt, and he is spending some of it tonight on good ale and a warm bed. The first such he has had in a long while, but the coin has not made him merry. There is a weariness on him deeper than the road's weariness, the weariness of a man who has seen things he cannot unsee and done deeds he cannot undo. going home to find out whether home is still there and whether he can still live in it. The age is full of such men, for it is an age of much war, and the roads carry them back and forth, out to the fighting young and hopeful, home again older and quieter and marked. He warms himself at the common fire and drinks the common ale, and is glad, you can see, of the ordinary human company, of being for one night among people who want nothing from him but to share a hearth. And the alehouse gives him that, asks nothing, lets him be, and it is perhaps the kindest thing that has happened to him in a long time. The other is young, very young, hardly more than a boy. And where the soldier is going home, this one is going out, away from home for the first time, into the wide world to seek his fortune, and his face is all eagerness and fear in equal measure. He is a journeyman, or hopes to be, a young craftsman who has served his apprenticeship in his own town, and now must travel to find a master who will take him on and pay him a wage, to learn his trade more deeply, and one day, if fortune favours him, to become a master himself. So he is on the road with his tools on his back, and a few coins and a letter perhaps from his old master, walking from town to town, knocking at workshop doors, a small brave figure, setting out alone into a world he does not yet know. Everything is new to him and a little frightening. The road, the dark, the strangers, this very alehouse, and he sits wide-eyed, drinking it all in, listening to the carter's road law, and the chapman's gossip, and the pilgrim's wonders, and the soldier's silence. Gathering it all up, learning the world. There is something touching in the way the older travellers take the boy under their wing, without a word said about it, simply by including him, by answering his shy questions, by passing him the bread, by making room for him at the fire. The carter tells him which roads are good and which to fear. The chapman, who cannot help himself, gives him a piece of sharp advice about not trusting chapmen. Even the silent soldier, at some point, says a quiet word to him. Some small, hard-won wisdom about keeping his wits and his purse close on the road. It is the old kindness of the experience toward the green, of those going home toward one setting out, and it is one of the gentle graces of the road, this passing on of care from the seasoned traveller to the new, and it tells you, this small kindness, what the alehouse truly is at its heart. It is not merely a place to drink. It is a place where the road takes care of its own, where the lonely traveller is gathered in, where the frightened boy and the weary soldier and the far-walked pilgrim all find, for one night, a fire and a fellowship and a little human warmth to carry them on their separate ways in the morning. Sit among them and feel it, the quiet web of care that the firelight weaves between these strangers, and know that you are inside it too, gathered in, taken care of, one of the company of the road. Let me take you, in your mind, just to the door and a look out into the yard, for there is a whole working world to the back of an alehouse that the warm front room does not show. And it is part of what makes this a true halt on the road, and not merely a house where ale is sold. The carter rose a while ago and went out to look to his beasts a last time before he sleeps. And we can follow him in our thoughts, out under the dripping eaves, into the wet dark of the yard where the real machinery of travel stands waiting out the night. There is the carter's wagon, drawn up under a lean-to against the rain, a great heavy thing of oaken iron, its load lashed down and covered, the wealth of his journey, the goods he is paid to move from where they are made to where they are wanted. And there are his beasts, the oxen, or the heavy horses that draw it, stabled now in the rough shelter at the yard's edge, fed and watered and resting, for a carter tends his beasts before himself always, knowing that without them he is nothing, that they are his living and his livelihood and his daily companions on the long, lonely roads. He runs a hand over a flank in the dark, speaks a low word, sees that they are easy, and they know his voice and his touch and settle to it. The bond between a carter and his team is a deep one, wordless and lifelong, the bond of a man and the animals his whole life depends upon, and there is a tenderness in his last looking to of them that he would show no person. There may be other beasts in the yard tonight, for travellers come mounted as well as afoot, and where there are travellers there are the animals that carried them, the riding horse, the pack pony, the mule, each stabled and fed, each a small fortune to its owner, each tended before its master takes his own rest. The alehouse keeps a stable or a shelter that serves as one, and hay and water, and this is part of what the traveller pays for, not only his own warmth and food, but the safe keeping of his beast through the night. For a horse left out in the dark might be stolen or stray or sicken, and a traveller's beast is often the most valuable thing he owns. So the yard on a busy night is its own small settlement of resting animals, breathing in the dark, shifting in their stalls, the warm beastie smell of them mixing with the wet and the wood smoke. And the sound of them is one of the sounds of the sleeping house, the stamp and the sigh and the slow grinding of hay that tells the half-waking traveller that all is well, that his beast is near and safe. And there are the other things of the yard, the well or the spring that gives the water for the brewing and the washing, the woodpile stacked and covered against the rain that feeds the precious fire, the brewing house or the brewing corner where the great vats stand and the alewife works her craft, the kale yard and the few beasts of the household's own, the pig perhaps, the hens. For the alehouse is also a working farmstead, or near it, a household that feeds itself off its own ground, as nearly every household does in this age. And the selling of ale is only one strand of a life that also grows and brews and bakes and keeps and makes nearly everything it needs. The carter, looking about the dark wet yard before he turns in, reads all this at a glance. The signs of a well-kept place, a sound roof, a full wood pile, a clean well, good order, and is satisfied. For a carter knows a good halt from a bad one, and this is a good one, and he will sleep the better for knowing it. He gives his beasts a last word, and pulls his hood up, and crosses the wet yard back to the lit door, and the warm room and his place by the fire, and the yard settles back into its dark, the beasts breathing. The rain falling, the wagon waiting out the night for the road that waits in the morning. Sit a while longer with your ale, and let me widen the picture for you, because the handful of travellers gathered at this one fire are only a few drops of a great moving river, and it helps to see the whole of it. We think of the medieval world as a settled and a rooted one, and so in the main it was most people living and dying within a few miles of their birthplace. But the roads were never empty, and the world was more in motion than we imagine, and an alehouse on a good road would see, across a year, a fair sample of everyone who moved through the land. Look at tonight's company and multiply it across 1,000 such fires, and you begin to see the traffic of the age. There were the merchants, the men of substance moving the goods of the country and the goods of far lands, wool going down to the ports to be shipped abroad, wine and spices and fine cloth coming up from the ports to the inland towns. The whole slow circulation of trade that knit the kingdom together and tied it to the wider world beyond the sea. There were the drovers, the hard-weathered men who walked herds of cattle and flocks of sheep along the old droving ways, sometimes for hundreds of miles, from the uplands where the beasts were raised to the lowland markets and the hungry towns where they were sold, living rough on the road for weeks, sleeping out with their beasts. There were the king's messengers, riding fast with letters and orders, changing horses, sparing no haste, carrying the will of the great across the land. There were the justices, going on their circuits from town to town to hold the courts, and the officials of the church and the crown about their business, and the great lords themselves moving with their households from one of their manors to another, eating up the stores of each in turn. And there were the humbler travellers, who were the most of them, the ones most like tonight's company. The pilgrims, in their thousands, walking to the shrines. The craftsmen on the tramp, looking for work, like the young journeyman by the fire. The soldiers going to the wars and coming home from them. The peddlers and the chapmen with their packs. The students walking to the schools and the universities. The friars and the wandering preachers. The minstrels and the players going from feast to feast. The poor, the masterless, the beggars, the runaways. The ones the hard turns of life had set adrift on the roads with nowhere to go and nothing to lose, who are the shadow side of all this movement, and of whom the settled folk were rightly wary. All of these were on the roads of the age in their seasons, and all of them, at one time or another, came to a door like this one out of the dark and the wet, and were taken in and warmed and fed, and given a place to lie. It is worth holding this in your mind, because it changes the meaning of the small warm room you are sitting in. This is not a backwater. It is a node on a living network, one of the countless small points of shelter that made the vast traffic of the age possible, that allowed a person to set out from one end of the land and reach the other. A day's walk at a time, fire to fire, alehouse to alehouse, never quite without hope of warmth and food, and a roof by nightfall. Take away these houses of welcome, and the roads become impassable. The country falls apart into isolated islands. The merchant cannot move his wool, nor the pilgrim reach his shrine, nor the son carry news to his distant mother. The humble alehouse. The alewife's lit door is part of the very circulation of the kingdom's lifeblood, and the nameless women who kept these doors open were, though no chronicle says so, among the people who held the whole moving world together. You are sitting at one small beating point of that great network tonight, and through this room, across the years, has passed a thread of the whole travelling life of the age. Every kind of traveller, every kind of errand. All of them taken in from the same dark, all of them warmed at the same kind of fire. Drink to the roads, and to the lit doors along them, and to the moving world they made possible, and settle deeper into your small, warm node of it on this wild and ordinary night. There is a thread woven through this whole evening that I have touched, but not yet drawn out for you, and it is the thread of faith, for these are people of a believing age. And their religion is not a thing kept for Sundays and set apart from the rest of life, but the very air they breathe, present in every hour and each act, and nowhere more than on the road and at its end. Let me show you how it runs through the night, this quiet, constant faith, because once you have seen it, you will understand these travellers far better. It began before they ever reached the door, out on the road itself, for the roads of this age are marked with the signs of faith. At the crossways, at the fords, at the brows of the hills, stand the wayside crosses. Stone crosses raised by the piety of the past, where a traveller pauses to cross himself and say a prayer for safe passage, for the crossroads and the fords and the lonely places are where the dangers gather, the robbers and the worse than robbers, and a prayer is the traveller's first defence. The pilgrims, you may be sure, stopped at every one. The others too, in their way, for even the worldly chapman and the hard soldier will cross themselves at a wayside cross on a dark road. The gesture gone so deep below thought that it is hardly a choice at all. the body's own old habit of reaching for protection. The whole landscape, to these people, is marked with holiness and with danger both, and faith is the thread that guides them safely through it. And it came in with them, through the door, the faith, and sits with them at the fire. Before they ate, there was grace, a murmured blessing over the bread and the pottage, the food received as a gift from God and not taken for granted. For these are people who know real hunger and do not forget who is thanked for a full bowl. The friar at the fire is the most visible sign of it, but the faith is in all of them, in the holy badges on the pilgrims' hats, in the saint's name a man swears by, in the small prayers that pepper their speech, in the deep, unspoken assumption, shared by every soul in the room, that the world is watched over, that the saints are near, that the dead are not gone, but only passed ahead, that this hard life is the short prelude to a longer one, and that the whole of it, the road and the dark and the danger and the warm fire at the end, is held in the hand of God. This is not a thing they argue or examine. It is simply the shape of things to them, as plain and as present as the fire and the rain. And listen, now, in one of the quiet lulls of the talk, and you may hear it, far off, through the wind, the sound that orders the whole life of this age, the sound of a bell. It is the bell of the village church, or of some house of religion, further off, ringing the hours of prayer across the country, and it reaches even here, even into the warm alehouse, faint and clear between the gusts of wind. The bell is the clock of this world, the one voice that divides the formless dark of the night into its parts, ringing out the canonical hours, calling the monks and the nuns from their sleep to their prayers in the deep of the night, while the rest of the land slumbers. To the half-sleeping travellers, the far bell is a comfort, a reminder that even now, in the blackest middle of the night, somewhere not far off, there are holy men and women awake and at prayer, keeping the great vigil of the church, holding the sleeping world up before God while it sleeps. There is someone awake and praying in the night. The thought wraps the sleeping alehouse in a kind of safety, deeper than the barred door. The bell falls silent, the wind whips up again, and the travellers, easier for the sound of it, sink a little further toward their rest, held as they have always believed themselves held, in a watched and a guarded and a holy dark. This is an autumn night, wet and wild, the kind of night that drives travellers gladly in off the road. But let me show you, before the evening closes, how this same small house wears the changing seasons of the year. For the alehouse is not the same place in spring that it is in the deep of winter, and the turning year moves through it as surely as it moves through the fields outside. To know a place truly, you must know it in all its seasons, and so let your mind run, for a moment, around the whole circle of the year as this house lives. In the deep of winter, the alehouse is at its dearest and its most needful, for the days are short, and the dark is long, and the roads are foul with mud or locked with frost. And to be caught out on a winter night is a thing that can kill. So in winter the fire is built high and kept burning, and the travellers who come are fewer, but the gladder to arrive, and the long black evenings are filled with all that you have seen tonight. The talk and the ale and the tales drawn out across the longest nights of the year. The local folk come more too in winter, for there is little work to be done in the frozen fields, and the alehouse is the one warm, bright place in a dark, cold world. And the village draws into it of an evening as the body draws toward a fire. Winter is the alehouse's deep season, its time of greatest welcome and greatest need. In the spring, the world opens, and the roads dry, and the travelling begins again in earnest. The pilgrims setting out, the merchants moving, whole pent-up traffic of the winter spilling out onto the mending roads. The alewife brews more, for there are more to drink it, and the door stands open to the milder air, and the evenings lengthen so that the company sits later in the light, and there is the new ale of the year to look forward to, and the first of the spring's plenty creeping back into the pottage pot, the young greens, the first eggs, the milk coming back as the beasts go out to the new grass. Spring is the season of the road's reawakening, and the alehouse wakes with it. In the high summer, the long light evenings stretch the day almost into the night, and the door stands wide, and the travellers are many, and the harvest looms ahead. And then comes the harvest itself, the great labour of the whole year, when every hand in the countryside bends to the gathering in of the grain, and the alehouse trade shifts. For the local men have no evenings to spare while the harvest is on, working the fields till the last of the light. But there is a fierce thirst on them, and the ale is drunk in the field as much as by the fire. And when the harvest is safely in, there is the harvest ale, the celebration, the one great loosening of the year, when the village comes to the alehouse to drink to the gathered crop and the winter that can now be faced. And the fire is high, and the ale flows, and there is music, and the weariness of the long labour is washed away in one good night. And then the year turns down again toward the autumn, toward nights exactly like this one. The wet and the wind returning, the travellers driven in, the fire built up, the long dark season of welcome, beginning again. So the alehouse turns with the year, as everything in this world turns with the year. The same small house wearing the spring and the summer and the harvest and the deep winter, each in its season. The fire higher or lower, the door open or barred, the company many or few, the pottage rich or thin, according to what the turning year has given. And tonight you have caught it in the autumn, at the gate of winter, on a wild wet night of the kind that shows the alehouse at its truest. A lit warm door against the closing dark, a refuge as the hard season comes on. There is a deep rightness in being here now, on just such a night, for this is the night the whole place is made for. The wild night that drives the traveller in and shows him exactly what an alehouse is for. The year has turned you in here, out of the dark, to the fire, and here you will stay till morning, while the autumn rain falls and the long winter waits beyond it, and the small warm house holds its travellers safe through the turning of the year. Look, while the company is settled and easy, at what these travellers wear and carry, for there is a whole life written in a person's gear, and the dress of the road in this age is nothing like our own, and worth the seeing. These are not people with a change of clothes for every day, and a bag of comforts at their back. What a traveller wears he very largely owns, and what he carries he needs. And there is nothing spare or idle in any of it. Begin with the great garment that nearly every one of them wears, and that you have seen steaming by the fire all evening, the cloak. The heavy woolen mantle that is the traveller's whole defence against the weather. It is a wide thing, woven thick and close, undyed or dyed in the muted browns and greys and russets that the plants and the lichens give, hooded or worn with a separate hood, and it is coat and blanket and shelter all in one. Wrapped close against the rain on the road and drawn over the body for warmth in the straw at night. A good cloak is among the most valuable things a poor traveller owns, and he tends it and mends it, and would no sooner part with it than with his own skin. Beneath it goes the tunic, the long shirt belted at the waist, of wool or of linen, and the hose on the legs, and on the feet the shoes of the age, soft turned shoes of leather stitched and turned, holed and worn and forever wet. For there is no keeping dry on a medieval road, and the only wisdom is to let the water through. And see what they carry, for the pack tells the man. The pilgrim has his scrip, the satchel for bread, and a few coins, and his staff, and his badges. The chapman has his great pack of small wares, his whole shop, and his whole fortune on his back. The carter has little on his person, for his wealth is in his wagon and his beasts. The soldier carries his weapon and his hard-won pay knotted into his belt, where a thief would have to wake him to reach it. The young journeyman carries his tools, the precious tools of his trade, wrapped and guarded, for they are his means of making a living and not lightly replaced. And nearly every one of them carries a knife at the belt, the all-purpose knife that every person in this age carries, man and woman alike, for eating and for working and for whatever the day requires, a tool far more than a weapon, as much a part of a person's dress as their shoes. They carry a little money, most of them, in coin, the silver pennies of the realm, kept close and counted careful. For coin is scarce and dear, and a traveller robbed of his purse on a far road is in a hard case indeed. What strikes you, looking them over, is how little it all is, and how complete. A cloak, a tunic, a pair of worn shoes, a knife, a staff, or a pack, or a tool roll, a few coins, and the clothes on their backs. And that is very nearly the whole of what most of these travellers own in all the world. Carried with them on the road, the sum of their goods light enough to walk with. And yet they want for nothing, they truly need. The cloak keeps the rain off and the body warm. The knife does the work of a dozen tools. The pack holds the trade that holds the life. There is a kind of freedom in it that our own cluttered age can scarcely imagine. The freedom of the person who carries everything they own and is held back by nothing, who can rise in the morning and shoulder their few goods and walk into a new day with the whole road open before them. These travellers are poor, by any reckoning we would make. But watch them by the fire, warm and fed and easy, owning little and needing less. And you may wonder, just for a moment, who is the richer, they or we? And the question is not so simple as it looks. Let it sit with you, gently, in the warm, as the fire burns down and the long night turns. I have told you much of the alewife, but little of her household. And there is a household here, behind the trade, a family and a home of which the alehouse is only the public face, and it is worth drawing out. For it deepens the warmth of the place to know that this is not merely a business, but a home that opens its door to strangers. The alehouse, remember, is the family's own house. The room you sit in is their own room, the fire their own fire, and the welcome they give is the welcome of a household sharing its hearth, not the cool transaction of an inn. There may be a husband, somewhere about the place, though it is the wife who brews, and the wife who is the heart of the alehouse, for the brewing is her craft, and the selling her trade. He may be a husbandman, working the family's land by day, the strips in the open fields and the beasts and the garden, the alehouse only one strand of a household economy that also farms and keeps and makes nearly everything it uses. He may be off about that work even now, or sitting quiet in a corner, or he may be dead, and she a widow, keeping the house alone, as many an alewife was. For the trade was one a woman could carry on her own, and many widows did, finding in the brewing and the selling a way to keep themselves and their children when the man was gone. Whatever his case, it is plainly her house tonight. Her fire, her ale, her command, and he, if he is here, defers to her in it as readily as the travellers do. And there are children, almost certainly, or there were, for a medieval household is rarely without them. The small ones are abed already, tucked away in the inner room or the loft, asleep through all the evening's company, used from birth to the coming and going of strangers and the sound of talk by the fire. The older ones may still be about, helping, a girl carrying cups or tending the pot under her mother's eye, a boy seeing to the traveller's beasts in the yard, learning the trade as children learn everything in this age, not in any lesson, but simply by living inside the work, by being always in the room where it is done. The girl at the alewife's elbow tonight will keep an alehouse of her own one day, very likely, and brew by the knowledge she is soaking up now without knowing she learns it. The craft passing from mother to daughter as it has passed down the generations, hand to hand, mind to mind. And there may be others of the household, a servant, a poor kinswoman taken in, an old grandparent by the fire. For the medieval household is a wide and flexible thing, not the small tight family of a later age, but a whole little community under one roof, kin and servants and dependents, all bound into the one working life of the house. The alehouse gathers them all in, and gathers the travellers in among them, so that the stranger from the road, for one night, is not lodged in some separate place set aside for paying guests, but is taken into the very midst of a family's own life, sat at their own fire, fed from their own pot, bedded down in their own warm room among their own people. There is a homeliness in that, a generosity, that the grand inns of a later age, with their private chambers and their hired service, quite lost. Here the welcome is the welcome of a home, rough and close and real, the family opening its own hearth to whoever the dark road brings. And you are inside it tonight, taken into the heart of a household 600 years gone, warmed at their own fire, one of the family for a night. And there are few kinder places in all of history to spend a wild, dark evening than in the warm, crowded heart of a medieval home that has opened its door to the stranger. Settle into the homeliness of it, and let it hold you. There is a small thing happening over by the settle that I would have you notice, because it speaks to one of the gentlest sides of this rough age, the care of the weary body at the end of a hard road. One of the pilgrims has eased off a shoe and is tending a foot worn raw by the day's walking, and the alewife, seeing it, has brought something from her store, and there is a quiet kindness in the exchange that is worth dwelling on. For these are people who live in their bodies far more than we do, who walk every mile they travel and feel every one of them. And the small hurts of the road, the blistered foot, the strained back, the chill settling into the chest, are the constant companions of a traveller's life, and the tending of them is part of the comfort an alehouse gives. The remedies are simple and old, and made of what the land and the kitchen give. The alewife, like every woman of her age, holds in her head a store of homely healing handed down from her mother. The knowledge of the herbs and the simples and the small workings that ease the common hurts of life. For the worn and blistered foot, a salve perhaps, of rendered fat and healing herbs, or a poultice, or simply a basin of warm water to soak the ache away. For the chill that a wet day drives into the bones, a hot drink, ale warmed at the fire, with herbs steeped in it, or a posset, to drive the cold out and bring on a sweat and a good sleep. For the cough that is starting in someone's chest, honey, if the house runs to it, and horehound or some other herb of the garden, and the warmth of the fire, and rest. None of it is what we would call medicine, and much of it is half charm and half hope. But a good deal of it works, in its way, and all of it is given in kindness. And kindness itself is no small part of healing. For this is an age that knows sickness intimately and fears it deeply, an age with no true understanding of what causes disease and few real defences against it, where a fever or a flux, or a wound gone bad can carry off the strongest in a few days, where the great pestilences sweep through and take a third of everyone, where every birth is a danger to mother and child both, and where the line between a passing ailment and a deadly one can never be known until it is past. The people in this room have all buried kin, parents and children, and husbands and wives, taken by sicknesses that we would shrug off, and they carry that knowledge quietly, and it makes them tender often toward the small hurts they can ease, since the great ones are so far beyond their reach. The alewife tending a pilgrim's blistered foot is doing the one kind of healing she can be sure of, the easing of a small real pain. And there is a whole philosophy of life folded into the gentleness of it, the determination to soften what can be softened in a hard world where so much cannot be softened at all. And there is comfort in it for the traveller beyond the easing of the foot, the comfort of being cared for, of being, for one night, in a place where someone notices the body's small sufferings and moves to ease them. The road is hard and lonely, and a traveller goes for days, sometimes with no one to mark whether he is well or ill, sound or hurting, alive or dead. To come into the warm and have a capable, kind woman look at your worn foot and bring a salve for it, asking nothing, is to be, for a moment, not a solitary traveller alone against the world, but a person among people, cared for, looked after, held. It is a small thing, the tending of a foot, and it is everything, the whole difference between the cold indifference of the road and the warm fellowship of the fire. Watch it. The alewife bent over the pilgrim's foot in the firelight, the salve, the murmured word, the easing of one small pain in one tired body on one wild night. And know that you too are in a place of such care tonight, where the body's weariness is noticed and eased, where you are not alone against the dark, but held and tended and kept. Let the kindness of it settle into you and ease your own day's weariness and turn you gently toward rest. The talk has turned, as the ale goes round again, to the wide earth and its wonders. For the chapman has been to places the village men have only dreamed of, and the pilgrims further still, and there is no better entertainment on a dark night than the telling of marvels from far countries, the stranger and the more wonderful the better. So let the room draw close again, and let us listen as the travellers trade their wonders, because the way this age imagined the wider world is one of the most charming things about it, and a wonder tale by the fire is a different and a lighter pleasure than the friar's grave moral story. The land beyond the horizon, to these people, is a place of marvels, half real and half fabulous, known only through the tales of the few who have travelled and the fewer who have written, grown and embroidered in the telling, until the true and the wild are woven past separating. Tales come of far cities greater than any in the land, of the great trading towns across the sea, of the holy city of Jerusalem and the wonders of the east beyond it. There are tales of strange beasts, the elephant and the camel and the lion, and stranger ones that no eye ever saw, the unicorn, the dragon, the creatures of the bestiary that carry a moral on their backs. There are stories of far peoples with strange customs, of lands where it is always hot or always cold, of mountains of gold and rivers of jewels and trees that bear wool, of the marvels that the medieval mind, knowing so little and wondering so much, scattered generously across the unknown edges of the map. The chapman tells them with relish, half believing and half winking, and the village men drink them in wide-eyed, and the pilgrims, who have seen a little more of the real strangeness of far places, add their soberer wonders, which are sometimes the strangest of all. What is lovely in it is the openness of the wonder, the readiness to believe that creation is far larger and far stranger than the small known round of one's own life, and full of marvels, just over the edge of the known. These people do not travel, most of them, beyond a day's walk of their birthplace, and so the wide earth is to them a vast bright mystery, a place where anything might be true, and they fill it with their wonder as a child fills the dark with imaginings, not from foolishness, but from a kind of generous awe before a world too big to know. There is no cynicism in it, no weary certainty that everything has been seen and measured and explained. It is still enchanted, still half unknown, still capable of holding dragons at its edges and cities of gold beyond its mountains. And there is a richness in living inside a world like that, a sense of wonder and a possibility that our own thoroughly mapped and measured age has bought its knowledge by losing. And there is comfort in the wonder too, on a dark night at the world's wet edge. To hear that the world is wide and bright and full of marvels, that beyond the cold rain and the muddy road and the small, hard round of daily life, there are golden cities and holy places and wonders past imagining, is to be lifted, for a while, out of the narrowness of one's own circumstances into a larger and a brighter place. The village man going home through the rain to his few muddy acres carries with him, now, the image of the far cities and the strange beasts and the rivers of jewels, and his life is a little wider for it, a little brighter, a little more full of possibility. The wonder tale is a kind of escape, the oldest kind, the lifting of the spirit out of the here and now into the marvellous elsewhere, and a fire on a dark night, with a clever teller and a room full of wondering faces, is exactly where it was made to happen. Let the wonders carry you too, lying where you are, out past the edge of the known, into the bright marvellous lands, the medieval mind imagined, beyond the horizon, the golden cities and the strange beasts and the far holy places. And let the wonder of it lift you and ease you and turn you gently toward the country of sleep, which is itself the strangest and the most marvellous far place of all, and which you are very near to now. Let me draw your eye, before the evening turns toward its close, to the smallest members of tonight's company, the ones on 4 legs, for an alehouse is never without its creatures, and they are part of the deep homeliness of the place. And there is no surer sign that you are in a true home and not a cold lodging than the cat asleep by the hearth and the dog under the table, hoping for scraps. The animals of the house are the quiet heart of its peace, and watching them settle is one of the gentlest ways to feel the night drawing down toward rest. There is a dog, of course, or more than one, for every household of this age keeps a dog, and the alehouse dog has the best of lives. Warm by the fire and well fed on the scraps of a place where food is always being served. He is no fine hound, this one, but a rough, honest working dog of no particular breeding, and he has his uses, guarding the house and the yard, warning of strangers, keeping down the rats. But tonight his work is done, and he lies stretched full length before the hearth in the best of the warmth, twitching now and then in some dog's dream, lifting his head when a new dish is brought and laying it down again when nothing comes of it, the very picture of contentment. The travellers, who many of them have dogs of their own at home, far away, are glad of him, and a hand drops now and then to scratch his ears, and he leans into it, and there is a wordless comfort in the company of a friendly dog by a fire that needs no explaining to anyone who has known it. And there is a cat, somewhere, as there must be. For the cat earns its place in any house of this age by the oldest of bargains, keeping the mice and the rats from the precious stores of grain and meal that are the household's life. The alehouse cat is a serious worker by day and night, but in the warm evening hours it too takes its ease, curled in some chosen place, on a settle, on a lap that will have it in the warmest corner of the hearth, asleep or half asleep, opening one eye now and then to weigh the room and closing it again, supremely indifferent to the talk and the music and the dice, present at the heart of all the human warmth and entirely unmoved by it. There is something deeply settling in the presence of a sleeping cat by a fire, a kind of guarantee of peace. For a cat will not sleep where there is danger or unease, and a cat curled and purring on the hearth is a sign that all is well, that the house is safe, that the night may be trusted. These small creatures, the dog and the cat, and whatever else shares the house. The hens shut up for the night, the pig in its sty, the beasts in the yard are part of the one warm web of life that an alehouse gathers under its roof against the dark. In this age, the line between the human household and its animals is not drawn as sharply as we draw it. They share the same roof, the same fire, the same scraps, the same dangers of the same dark night. And there is an old, easy companionship between people and their beasts that our own age, with its animals shut out or shut away, has largely lost. The dog by the fire and the cat on the settle are not pets in our sense, kept for nothing but company. They are working members of the household, earning their warmth, and yet they are loved too in the rough unspoken way of this age, and they give back in their presence by the hearth, a peace and a homeliness that is past price on a wild night. Watch them settle, the dog stretched in the firelight, the cat curled and purring, deep in the trusting sleep of creatures that know themselves safe, and let their peace be yours. And let the simple animal contentment of the warm hearth draw you down with them toward the same untroubled rest. There is a matter I have skirted all evening, and it is the matter of payment, of what all this costs and how it is reckoned, for the alehouse is a place of business as well as of welcome, and the traveller pays for his ale and his supper and his place to sleep, and the way that reckoning is done tells you something of the age. It is done with no fuss and no written bill, for few here could read one, but by tally and by trust and by the alewife's sharp, accurate memory, which holds the score of the whole room without ever seeming to try. The coin of the age is silver, the small silver pennies of the realm, and the lesser pieces cut from them, the halfpenny and the farthing, the fourth part of a penny. And these small coins are what the ordinary business of life is done in. A penny is a real sum to these people, near a day's wage for a labouring man. And the few pence a traveller spends on a night's ale and food and shelter are carefully counted out and carefully taken. There is little gold here, for gold is the money of the great, and a poor traveller may go years without handling a gold coin or seeing one. The reckoning is small and exact, a halfpenny for this and a farthing for that. The ale by the measure and the supper by the bowl and the bed by the night. All of it held in the alewife's head and rendered up at the end without hesitation. For she has been doing this all her life, and there is no cheating her and no need to. And yet much of it runs on trust, as much as coin. For this is a face-to-face world where a person's word and a person's name are worth more than any written bond. The local men may drink on credit, their score chalked up or kept in the alewife's memory against the day they can pay, for she knows them and where they live, and that they will be back. And a neighbour's debt is safe enough in a place where everyone knows, everyone, and a man who did not pay would be shamed before the whole parish. The traveller, the stranger, must mostly pay as he goes, for he will be gone in the morning and his word is unknown. But even here there is trust, the trust that takes a stranger in and feeds him before ever asking his coin. The trust that lets a poor pilgrim sleep by the fire for a blessing and a friar eat for nothing. The trust that is, in the end, the whole foundation of the hospitality of the road. The alewife judges each traveller with a quick, shrewd eye, and is rarely wrong, and gives credit or asks coin accordingly. And the system, rough as it is, works, held together by memory and reputation, and the hard practical kindness of people who know that they too may one day be the stranger at the door. What is worth pausing on is how little it costs in coin, and how much it is worth in truth. A few pennies buy a traveller everything the night has given: the fire, the ale, the hot supper, the company, the music, the tales, the tended foot, the safe bed, the shelter from a night that might otherwise have killed him. Set against the silver it costs, it is the cheapest thing in the world. Set against what it is worth to a cold and frightened traveller on a dark road, it is beyond price. This is the strange economy of the alehouse, that it sells. For a few small coins, the most precious things there are: warmth and safety and food and fellowship and rest, and turns a profit on them too, enough to keep the alewife and her household through the year. The traveller pays his few pence gladly in the morning, knowing he has had the best bargain of his life, and the alewife takes them and knows she has earned them, and both are satisfied. And the small just exchange of coin for comfort is itself one of the quiet decencies of the age. Drink the last of your ale, and think no more of the reckoning tonight, for it is small, and it will keep till morning, and what you have had for it is past all reckoning anyway, and the night is turning now toward its rest. Late in the evening, when the company has settled deep into its warmth, and the talk has gone soft, and the fire has burned low, there comes a sound that stiffens the whole room for a moment, a sound that on a wild night carries a particular weight, the sound of feet outside, and then a knock, and then the lift of the latch. Someone else is out there in the dark. One more traveller has seen the lit window and the swinging bush, and come to the door, late out of the storm, and the room turns toward the opening door, and the wind blows in cold, and there on the threshold, streaming wet, half dead with cold, stands the last arrival of the night. Watch what happens, for it is the whole soul of the alehouse shown in a single moment. There is no hesitation, no grudging, no turning away of a stranger, come too late, to a full house on a wild night. The alewife is already up and moving, the same words on her lips that she said to you hours ago: "Get you into the fire, you are wet through, come into the warmth." The company by the hearth draws aside without a word, making room, shifting along the bench, opening the circle to take in one more the way the circle opened for you. A place is found, a cup is filled, a bowl of what is left in the pot is pressed into the cold, shaking hands. And the last traveller, who an hour ago was alone and freezing and lost in the dark with no certainty of shelter, is suddenly inside, warm, fed, surrounded by the kind, rough fellowship of the road, taken in from the night as though he had been expected all along. It is done so easily, so much as a matter of course, that you might almost miss the wonder of it. But it is a wonder, and worth marking. The readiness of these people to open the door and make room, every time, for whoever the dark brings. For this is the deepest law of the road and the alehouse, deeper than any law a king ever wrote, the law of welcome, the duty of shelter, the unquestioned giving of warmth and food, and a place by the fire to the stranger out of the dark. It runs through the whole age, this law, rooted in the hard knowledge that any of them, any day, might be the one knocking at a strange door on a wild night, that the traveller you turn away tonight might be yourself tomorrow, that the road is long and cruel, and the only thing that makes it bearable is the certainty of the lit door and the open welcome at the end of the day. And it is rooted, too, in the faith of the age, in the teaching that Christ himself comes sometimes in the guise of the stranger at the door, that to take in the traveller is to take in the Lord, that the welcome given to the least is given to the highest. So the door opens every time, and room is made every time, and no soul is turned back into the dark. And the alehouse fills a little fuller and grows a little warmer with each new arrival gathered in. There is a lesson in it for our own age, which has grown so wary of the stranger, so quick to bar the door, so anxious in its plenty. These people had so little, and they gave it so freely, opening their fire and their food and their floor to whoever came, asking no questions, trusting the stranger, taking the risk of welcome over and over, because the alternative, a world of barred doors and turned away travellers, was a colder and a crueler world than even their hard one could bear. The last traveller drips and shivers by the fire, and the warmth comes into him, and the colour comes back to his face, and he looks around at the circle of strangers who have taken him in, and something eases in him, the deep relief of the rescued, the gratitude past words of one who was out in the dark and is now safe by the fire. He is one of the company now. By morning he too will be a friend, and the room is the warmer and the fuller and kinder for his coming, as a room always is for an act of welcome. Settle back into the gathered warmth, with one more soul gathered into it, and feel the deep rightness of the open door, and let it warm you as it eases him, and turn you as the night turns. Toward rest, the wind has been rising again while the company talked, and now, in a lull, you become aware of it. The storm gathering its strength out there, and there is a deep pleasure in marking it from inside the warm room. The old animal pleasure of hearing the weather rage and knowing it cannot reach you. So listen, for a while, to the night at its wildest, and feel the snug, strong house holding against it. For there are few things that deepen the comfort of shelter like the sound of a storm shut safely out. It comes first as a sound far off, a long sigh through the trees beyond the yard, and then nearer, a buffet against the gable, a rattle at the shutters, and then the full voice of it, the wind coming off the open country and breaking against the house, finding every chink and crack, moaning in the smoke hole, worrying at the thatch, flinging the rain against the shutters in long, hard, hissing gusts. The flames of the fire lean and shudder when a gust comes down the smoke hole, and the rush-like gutters and the shadows leap on the walls. And for a moment the snug room seems to shrink and huddle against the violence outside, and then the gust passes and the fire steadies and the room breathes out until the next one comes. There is a rhythm to a storm heard from inside, the gathering and the breaking and the passing and the lull, and the body learns it and tenses and eases with it, and there is a strange music in it. The wild night singing its long song against the patient house. And the house holds. That is the thing to feel. For all the fury of the wind, the thick walls do not so much as tremble. The heavy thatch keeps the rain out. The barred door stands fast, and the storm, rage as it may, cannot get in. These houses were built by people who knew their weather, built low and strong and snug, their walls thick, their roofs steep, to shed the rain, their doors small and well fitted. Hunkered down into the land, with their backs to the worst of the wind, and they have stood through 100 such storms, and will stand through 100 more. The wind may scream, and the rain may lash, but the house simply endures it, as it has always endured it, holding its warm cargo of sleeping souls safe at the heart of the storm. And there is a deep reassurance in the solidity of it, the sense of being inside something strong and tested and equal to the worst the night can bring. This is one of the oldest comforts there is, older than this house, older than these roads, the comfort of safe shelter, while the storm rages outside, and it goes very deep in us, deeper than thought. Something in the body, some old inheritance from the long ages when a storm could truly kill, relaxes and rejoices at the sound of wild weather safely shut out. At the contrast between the violence beyond the wall and the warmth within. The fiercer the storm, the sweeter the shelter, the louder the wind, the deeper the peace of the dry, sheltered room. And so the travellers, far from being troubled by the rising storm, are soothed by it, lulled by it, sinking the deeper towards sleep, for the sound of the wild night raging harmlessly beyond the walls. The rain on the thatch become a lullaby, the moan of the wind a cradle song, the whole fury of the weather only deepening by contrast the warm, safe stillness of the sheltered room. Let it lull you too, lying where you are. Let the storm rage, far off. Beyond the wall, it cannot reach you. The house holds, the fire is kept. You are safe and warm at the heart of the wild night, and the storm itself is singing you to sleep. Sit a moment with the age of this place, before the night draws wholly down, for the alehouse you are warming in is older than anyone now under its roof, and it has sheltered more souls than the alewife could begin to count. And there is a quiet weight in that, a depth, that adds to the comfort of the night. This fire has been lit on this hearth for longer than living memory. These walls have stood through more storms than any tongue could number. And through this low door across the years has passed a great uncounted procession of travellers, every one of them taken in from the dark, exactly as you were taken in tonight. Think of them, all the ones who have sat where you are sitting, on this same worn bench, by this same hearth, across the long years of the house. The carters and the chapmen and the pilgrims and the soldiers, the merchants and the drovers and the wandering poor, season after season, year after year, each one come a different road, each one carrying a different life, each one warmed at this fire for a night and gone again in the morning, on down their own road, into their own story, never to return. The alewife has seen so many of them that they blur together in her memory, a great river of faces flowing through her door and out again, and she has fed them all and warmed them all and sent them all on. And most of them she never saw again and never knew the end of. The traveller warmed and gone, the story glimpsed for a night and then carried away down the road forever. There is something both melancholy and deeply comforting in it. This thought of the long procession of the sheltered, the countless tired souls who have found this same warmth across the years. Melancholy, because they are all gone now, everyone. Scattered and dead and forgotten, their names unknown, their stories lost, swallowed by the same dark that swallows everything in the end. But comforting too, more comforting than melancholy, because it means you are not alone, not the first, not the last. Only one more in the great line of travellers who have come in from the dark to this fire and been glad of it. You sit tonight in a place worn smooth by the gladness of the rescued, warmed by a fire that has warmed 10,000 others, sheltered under a roof that has sheltered the tired and the cold and the frightened for longer than anyone can say. The bench beneath you is polished by their sitting, the threshold is hollowed by their feet. The very heat of the room is, in a way, made of all the warmth that has ever been kindled here, the slow accumulated comfort of a place whose whole purpose year upon year, has been simply to take the traveller in and keep him safe till morning. And one day, far off, this house too will fall, as all houses fall, the roof rotting, the walls tumbling, the fire going cold at last on the hearth that kept it for so long. And the place where it stood will go back to grass and be forgotten. And no one will know that here once, on a wild autumn night 600 years before your own, a fire burned and an alewife brewed, and a roomful of strangers gathered in from the dark and were warm and safe and glad of one another. But that is far off, and it does not touch the warmth of tonight, and in truth, it only deepens it. For the comfort of a thing that will not last forever is the sweetest there is. The house stands tonight. The fire burns tonight. The travellers are gathered and safe tonight, and you are among them. One more in the line of the sheltered. Warm at the old fire on the wild night, held in the long kind history of a place that has done nothing all its life but take the stranger in. Rest in that deep warmth now, the comfort of all the years, and let it carry you down towards sleep. I want you to notice the light in this room before the evening burns any lower, because it is unlike any light you have lived by, and it shapes this whole world in ways we can scarcely imagine. We who need only touch a wall to flood a room with brightness at any hour we please. The people in this alehouse have no such power and never dreamed of one, and their whole bond with light and dark is one of the deepest things that divides their age from ours. For them, light is precious and made at cost, and the dark is vast and real and not to be banished, only held off, a little, for a little while, around a small and guarded flame. Look at where the light is coming from. There is the fire first and most, the broad red-gold glow of it filling the low room, throwing its warmth and its light together. The true sun of this indoor world, and there is little else. There may be a rushlight or two, the simplest of all lamps, a peeled rush dipped in fat and set burning with a small smoky flame that gutters and must often be replaced. Perhaps a tallow candle, costly and smelling of the animal fat it is made from, lit only when there is real need of it. There are no candles of clean wax here, for wax is dear and belongs to the church and the great hall. So the light is the fire and the rush and the little smoky flame, and beyond their small reach, the shadows gather and wait. This makes the light in the room a thing of pools and edges, nothing like the flat, even brightness we live in. It is warm and golden close to the fire, and it fades fast as it goes outward, so that the faces near the hearth glow clear, and the walls dissolve into shadow, and the far corners of the room are lost in a soft brown dark. The roof above is wholly black, the doorway is a deeper dark, and the light moves, always breathing with the fire, flaring when a log catches, sinking when it settles, throwing the shadows of the company huge and wavering up the walls and across the low beams, so that the room is alive with movement even when no one stirs. It is a light to gather close around, a light that draws the people in toward it, shoulder to shoulder in its small warm circle, and the very shape of the evening, the close ring of faces about the hearth, is made by the smallness of the light. People sat close in this age because the light and the warmth were small and central, and you had to come near them to have any share, and beyond the light, always, is the dark. And you must feel how complete that blackness was to understand these people at all. When the fire is banked for the night and the last rush is out, the blackness in this room will be absolute, a blackness with not one spark in it. The pure, deep dark that we of the lit world almost never meet. And outside, on a moonless night like this one, the night over the whole country is the same, total, unbroken, a blackness in which a traveller could be lost and drowned a stone's throw from shelter. This is the darkness these people lived inside for half of every day and the better part of every winter night, the real dark. The old dark that our own age has worked so hard to abolish that we have forgotten it ever existed. And it is against that ancient and total blackness, that the small fire burns in the middle of this room. You understand now, do you not, why the fire mattered so, why the lit window on the road was rescue, why the whole company draws so close around the hearth. The fire is the one light against the whole vast night. It is the thing that holds the night at bay. And on a wild night like this, the small bright light in the middle of the room is the dearest thing in all the world, the one bright point the gathered strangers draw close around, while the immense old dark of the medieval night stands, waiting all around the walls. Hold close to the light with them. It is small, and it is warm, and it is enough. Let me have you simply be here now, for a while in the room, with no tale to follow and no traveller to meet, only the room itself and all that the senses take in of it. For we have been busy all evening with the people and the talk, and there is a deep settling pleasure in stopping, just stopping, and letting the entire sensory world of the alehouse close gently around you. Let your eyes half close, let the talk become a murmur, and take it in, sense by sense, the texture of this place on this night. Feel it first. The warmth, of course, the broad, even warmth of the fire on the side of you turned toward it, and the slight coolness on the side turned away. The way a fire warms you uneven, and you turn yourself slowly to share it round. The hardness of the bench beneath you, worn smooth by years of sitting, and the give of your own drying cloak about your shoulders. The wooden cup in your hands, smooth and cool, the weight of the ale in it, the earth floor under your feet, and the rushes strewn over it. Dry and rustling, the very air on your face, mild and thick and still, after the cold wild air of the road. Now hear it, all of it, the whole soft weave of sound that fills the room. The fire, first, its low, steady murmur, the settling of a log, the small collapse of an ember, the faint hiss where a drop of rain has found its way down the smoke hole, the voices, low now, the murmur of the last talk by the hearth, a word, a chuckle, a long, easy silence, the small sounds of the house, the creak of a bench, the click of a cup set down, the soft pad of the alewife about her last tasks, the stir of the dog by the fire. And under it all, far off and gentled by the walls, the wind and the rain and the run of the ford, the whole wild night reduced by the thick walls to a soft background. Hush, a sound to sleep to. Now smell it. The deep layered scent of the place, which more than anything else is the very soul of it. The sweet, heavy wood smoke drifted through the whole room and soaked into everything. The malty richness of the ale and the working balm behind it. The savour of the pottage lingering from supper. The wet wool of the drying cloaks and the leather and the close human smell of the gathered company, and the homely animal smell of the dog by the fire and the beasts in the yard beyond. The earth and the rushes and the old smoke-blackened timber. It is not a clean smell, by your reckoning, but it is a living one. The smell of shelter and company and food and fire, the smell that will mean, ever after, to anyone who has known it, the deep, safe heart of an indoor night. And let all of it together, the warmth and the sounds and the smells and the soft moving firelight close around you like water closing over a stone, sinking gently to the bottom of a still pool. There is nowhere you need to be but here. There is nothing you need to do but breathe and be warm and let the room hold you. This is the deep, still center of the night, the long, quiet hour when the talk has nearly stopped and the fire has burned low and the whole sensory world has narrowed to this one small, bright circle of light and heat and soft sound, with the dark pressing gently all around it and unable to come in. Rest in it. Let it hold you. You have come a long road to reach this warm, still room, and there is nothing now between you and sleep but the slow letting go of the last of the day. Here, in the warm, in the deep, safe heart of the medieval night. It comes gently, the turning of the evening toward its end, with no clock to mark it. Only a slow change in the feeling of the room that everyone senses at once. The fire has been let to sink a little. The talk has wound down to long, easy silences. The minstrel has wrapped his instrument. And the village men, who have homes and beds of their own to go to, begin to think of leaving, of facing the short, cold, dark walk back down to the village and their own hearths. And one by one they rise and stretch and drain the last of their ale and gather their cloaks. There is no hurry in it, and no abruptness. A man stands and says his good nights, and is a while about it, exchanging a last word, a last jest, a last piece of news, for the parting is itself part of the evening's pleasure and not to be rushed. They wrap themselves well, for the night is bitter and the rain has not wholly stopped, pulling their hoods close and taking up a lantern if they have one, a horn lantern with a stub of candle, or a brand caught up glowing from the fire, to light the few wet steps home. And then they go out, one or two together, into the dark, and the wind blows in cold around the opening door. And the company by the fire calls its good nights after them, and the door shuts, and they are gone, swallowed at once by the night, their small light bobbing away down toward the unseen village, and then lost behind the hedge. The room is quieter for each one that goes, and a little emptier, and a little emptier, and a little more given over to the travellers who have nowhere else to be, who are not going home tonight, because home is far away down the road, who will sleep here, by this fire, under this thatch, because the alehouse is, for this one night, the nearest thing to a home they have. There is a particular feeling that settles over a public room as the local folk go home and the travellers are left, and it is one of the gentlest feelings the night has to give. The village men belong to the day's world, to the fields and the houses and the families just down the road, and when they go they take a little of the daytime world with them, its busyness, its rootedness, its concerns. What is left, when the door has shut behind the last of them, is the floating world of the road, the company of those who are between places, who have set down their journey for the night and not yet taken it up again, who belong, just now, nowhere but here. There is a freedom in it, and a kind of peace, the peace of having no home to go to, and therefore nothing to leave for, of being exactly where you will be until morning, with no decision left to make, and no road left to walk tonight. The travellers settle deeper into the warmth as the locals go. They are the ones the night truly belongs to. And the alehouse draws in around them, smaller and warmer and quieter, a shelter now and not a meeting place, a refuge for the night's last few souls. Listen to how the room changes as it empties. The voices which filled the air all evening thin and drop and soften until there are only a few left, murmuring low by the fire. The bustle stills. The alewife's pace eases, her great labour of the evening winding down toward its close. The fire, no longer fed up bright for a full room, is let to settle toward its night-long glow. and the sounds of the outside, the wind and the rain and the run of the ford, which were drowned all evening under the talk and the music, come back into the quieting room, gentled by the walls into a kind of lullaby. The steady soft hiss and patter that will sing the travellers to sleep. The night is deepening, the company is dwindling to those who will sleep here. And the whole warm room is beginning, by slow and gentle stages, to fold itself down toward rest. Let yourself begin to fold down with it. The talk is nearly done, the fire is sinking, the travellers are settling. And the long night ahead holds nothing now but warmth and shelter and sleep. Now the travellers must think of where they will lie, for there is no row of private chambers here, no bed made up with clean linen waiting behind a closed door. None of the comforts a later age would think the least a traveller might expect. This is an alehouse, a family's own house that takes folk in, and the sleeping is rough and shared and close, and that closeness, which might trouble you at first to think of, is in truth one of the warmest and safest things about the night, as you will come to feel. The alewife shows each their place, for she knows her house and how to bestow a roomful of weary strangers in it. Some will sleep here in the main room itself, on the benches drawn near the fire, or on the floor among the rushes, with a cloak for a blanket and a pack for a pillow, close to the banked warmth of the hearth, which is the best and the most sought-after place on a cold night. Some may climb to the loft, if the house has one, the low space up under the thatch reached by a ladder, where there is straw to lie in, warm with the heat that rises from the fire below, and rich with the smell of the thatch and the stored grain. The pilgrims may have a corner of their own, the carter a place near the door, where he can hear his beasts and his wagon in the yard, the cabman a spot where he can sleep with one hand on his precious pack. There are no fine distinctions here, no separate rooms for the better sort. The road has made these people equal, and the night makes them more equal still. All of them bedding down together in the one warm house, gentlefolk and common folk and holy folk and sharp folk, all breathing the same smoky air, and warmed by the same dying fire. The beds, such as they are made of simple things. There is straw, fresh or fresh enough, heaped and shaped into a yielding hollow. There are the traveller's own cloaks, those great rectangles of heavy wool that are coat by day and blanket by night. The most useful thing a traveller owns. There might be a rough blanket or two that the house provides, and a sack stuffed with straw or chaff for a pillow, or only a rolled cloak or a pack beneath the head. It is not soft, and it is not clean by your reckoning, and a fastidious traveller of a later age would shudder at it. But to a body that has walked all day on a wet road and is now warm and fed and safe, a heap of straw by a banked fire is a bed as welcome as any in the world. And sleep comes to it swift and deep and untroubled. The bone-deep sleep of the truly tired who have at last lain down in the warm. And here is the thing about this shared rough sleeping that I would not have you miss. Lying as you are, in your own quiet bed, in your own quiet century, no one here sleeps alone. The travellers bed down close, near the fire and near each other, in the one snug room. And there is a deep old safety in that closeness that we have largely traded away for our privacy and our separate chambers. To sleep in a room full of the breathing of others, even strangers, even folk you met only this evening and will part from at dawn, is to sleep guarded, sleep companioned, sleep as the whole of humanity slept for almost all of its long history. Gathered together against the dark, the fire is banked but warm, the door is barred against the night. The breathing of the company rises and falls all around in the dark. And no robber, no beast, no wandering thing of the night, can come at a person lying safe and close among their fellows behind a bolted door. The closeness that a modern traveller might shrink from is the very thing that makes the sleep so deep and so safe. Settle into it. You are among your fellows of the road. They are all around you in the warm dark, and the night cannot touch you here. The travellers are settling into their places now, and the last small tasks of the night fall, as the first ones did, to the alewife. For she is the keeper of this house, and the keeper is always the last to lie down. Watch her move about her quieting room in the low firelight, doing the things her hands have done at the close of every day for years, and you will find in it a peace as deep as anything the whole evening held. She makes her last round of the room. She gathers the cups and the bowls, the wooden and the earthen vessels the company drank and ate from, and stacks them by the wall to be washed in the morning. She covers what food is left, the heel of a loaf, the last of the cheese, against the dogs and the rats. She rights an overturned stool, sets a bench back against the wall, sweeps a careless rush back toward the hearth with her foot. She looks to the door and lowers the heavy bar across it, making the house fast against the night, against the wind, and against whatever else the dark might bring. And the sound of that bar dropping into place is the sound of the whole house being made safe. A sound the half-sleeping travellers hear and are comforted by even as they sink towards sleep. She moves among the bedded-down travellers, a word here. A blanket drawn up there, the brisk, unsentimental care of a woman seeing that her house full of strangers is settled for the night. And last of all, she comes to the fire, for the banking of the fire is the final act of every night in every house in this land. The laying of the fire down to sleep, so that the house may sleep. She does not put it out. To let a fire die wholly, cold and dead on the hearth, is a thing no careful housewife does. For a dead hearth means a cold and difficult morning, the long labour of striking fresh fire from flint and steel, and coaxing a new flame from nothing. So instead, she banks it, rakes the glowing embers together into a close heap, and covers them over with the fine ash, smothering the flame but not killing the heat, so that under the grey blanket of ash the fire will glow on. Low and slow and unseen, all through the dark hours, alive but sleeping, ready to be raked open and breathed back to flame in the cold grey dawn. It is a small, skilled act, done 1,000 times, done without a thought, and yet there is a kind of faith folded into it. The faith that the warmth kept through the night will be there to be woken in the morning. That the day need not begin cold and from nothing, but may be lit again from the living embers of the day before. There is a deep and gentle wisdom in the banking of the fire, and I would have you feel it. Lying there at the close of your own day, the fire is not ended. That is the heart of it. The day is over, and the light must go, and the house must sleep, but the fire is not killed, only covered, only laid down to rest, kept alive and glowing under the ash, so that the morning need not begin from nothing. There is no ending in it, only a resting. The warmth that served today will serve tomorrow. The same fire carries over, and the whole house follows the fire down into that same kept and resting sleep. The travellers in their straw, the alewife last of all to her own bed in the corner or the inner room. The dogs curled by the cooling hearth, all of them laid down now, all of them kept, all of them warm, while under the ash the banked fire glows on, the one waking thing in the sleeping house. Faithful through the dark, she gives the embers a last look, the alewife as a mother looks last at a sleeping child, and then she too lies down, and the house is dark and warm and barred and quiet, and every soul in it is at rest. The work of the night is done. There is nothing left now but sleep. The house is asleep now, all of it, and the night has come to its deep middle hour, the stillest time there is, when nothing stirs and the dark lies thickest over the land. Let us move through the sleeping alehouse one last time, very softly, the way you move through a house where everyone you care for is at rest, and let the deep peace of it settle into you. For there is no quieter or safer place in all the wide dark country tonight than this small warm room full of sleeping travellers. The fire is banked low on the hearth, its glow gone deep and red under the grey blanket of ash, neither rising nor falling, only keeping, only holding the warmth through the hours as it was banked to do. Now and then a coal settles in the heart of it with a soft sound, and a little more ash sinks down. But the glow does not fail. It will not fail. It will keep till the grey of the morning, when the alewife rises first of all and rakes it open and breathes it back to flame for another day. But that is hours off, and we will not go so far tonight. Tonight we will stay here in the long-held quiet, in the warm dark middle of the night, where the fire keeps and the travellers sleep, and the morning is only a far-off rumour, a thing that will come in its time, but not yet. Not for a long time yet, not for hours and hours of good deep sleep yet. The travellers lie all about the room in their places, and the sound of them is the very music of safety, the soft blended breathing of a roomful of sleepers. There is the carter, near the door, snoring low and steady, his great body at rest, at last, his beasts and his wagon safe in the yard, his day's haul done. There is the chapman, curled about his precious pack, one hand still resting on it, even in sleep. There are the pilgrims, their staffs leaned in the corner, their badged hats laid by, sleeping the deep sleep of bodies that have walked many holy miles. There is the friar and the soldier whose watchfulness has loosened at last into true rest, and the young journeyman, sleeping the bottomless sleep of the young on the first night of his great adventure. And the alewife, last to lie down and first to rise, asleep in her own corner. The keeper of the house at rest among the strangers she has gathered in and kept. Every soul in the room is accounted for. Everyone is warm, everyone is safe, and no harm in all the wide black night can come at them now, behind the barred door, around the banked fire, in the close warm company of one another. And beyond the walls, the whole black country sleeps with them. The road that brought you, the muddy road full of danger, lies empty, now under the night. The robbers gone to their own shadowy holes. The beasts denned up, no living thing moving on all its length. The ford runs unseen. The village beyond lies black and shut, its people deep asleep behind their own barred doors, their own fires banked. The men who walked home from the alehouse hours ago long since abed beside their wives. The fields lie open to the rain. The church stands unlit, but for the faint light at the altar, the holy ones within keeping their night vigil, holding the dark world up before God. And over all of it, the wild wet night, wind dropping now toward the morning, the rain thinning, the great country at rest under the turning sky, with here and there across its black breadth a single banked and sleeping fire, a single house full of souls gathered safe against the dark, exactly like this one. The whole world is asleep, the whole land is kept, and you are at the very warm heart of one small safe point of it. On the eve of nothing in particular, on an ordinary wild night 600 years ago, held as safe as any soul has ever been held, in the deep and quiet middle of the night. Let me sit with you a while longer in the warm dark, now that the house is deep asleep and there is nothing left to happen tonight, and say something about the thread that runs from that small room to this one, from those sleeping travellers to you, lying there 600 years away. For it is easy, on a journey like the one we have made tonight, to feel that we have gone to a place utterly unlike our own. And in its surfaces it is true. The muddy road and the ale stake and the unhopped ale and the straw on the floor are all gone now. Swept away by the long centuries, that particular alehouse fell into ruin and was forgotten before any of your great-grandfathers were born. The alewife is dust and nameless, and the travellers scattered to their separate graves long ago. The carter and the chapman and the pilgrims and the soldier and the boy, everyone. And yet the thing that happened in that room tonight is not gone at all, because it is the same that happens wherever tired strangers shelter together from the dark, and it happens still, and it will happen as long as there are roads and nights and people on them. Think of what you watched tonight. A handful of strangers who owed each other nothing, who would part in the morning and never meet again, came in out of the same cold and the same danger, and shared a fire, and shared their food and their ale and their news and their tales, and took care of one another, the seasoned looking out for the green, the warm making room for the cold, the whole room knitting itself into a fellowship for one night and asking nothing in return. That is not a medieval thing. That is a human one, of the oldest and best we have. The readiness to take the stranger in, to share the warmth, to make of a roomful of unknowns, a company for the length of a dark night. It happened in that alehouse, and it happened in the Sky Longhouse, and it happened around the first fire that the first travellers ever shared, and it happens still, tonight, in 1,000 places, wherever people are kind to the stranger out of the shadows. And you carry it in you, the same thing, the same deep instinct, or you would not be here, lying in the warm, listening to a tale of an old fire on an old road. The longing to be safe and warm and among others when the night comes down. The relief of the lit window at the end of a hard road. The gladness of company against the dark. The quiet trust that lets a tired traveller lie down. To sleep among strangers, believing they mean him no harm. These are not their feelings as against ours. These are the feelings, the human ones, that run under every age and join us to the people of the deep past more truly than any difference of road or drink or roof can divide us. The travellers asleep in that alehouse were people exactly as real as you, who feared the dark and loved a fire, and were glad of kindness, and longed, when the day was done, simply to lie down warm and safe among their fellows. Exactly as you long to do tonight. That is why I take you to these places, you and I. Night after night, down these old roads into these vanished rooms. Not only for the strangeness of them, though the strangeness is a wonder, but for the sameness under the strangeness, the discovery every time that we are not the first, that the long human company stretches back and back behind us, fire behind fire, road behind road, traveller behind traveller, all the way down, and that we belong to it, are held by it, are one more in the great line of tired souls who have come in out of the dark and been glad of the fire. There is a comfort in that, as deep as any the alehouse gave its travellers. You are not alone, and you never were. Somewhere on the road behind you, 600 years back, a carter and a chapman, and a pilgrim and a boy lay down to sleep by a banked fire on a wild night, warm and safe and glad of one another. And you are lying down tonight in the same warmth, the same gladness, the same old human shelter against the same old dark. The thread runs unbroken from their fire to your bed. Take it with you down into sleep. There will be a morning, of course, though we will not go all the way to it tonight, and it is a gentle thing to rest in for a moment, here in the deep, warm middle of the night. The knowledge of the quiet, ordinary morning that waits at the far end of the dark. Let me show it to you, not to wake you, but to settle you. The way it eases a sleeper to know that the dawn will come in its own good time and ask nothing of him until it does. In the grey of the morning, hours from now, the alewife will wake first, as the keeper of a house always wakes first. She will rise in the cold dark before the light, and go to the hearth and rake the ash from the banked fire, and find the embers still living and red beneath it, kept faithfully through the night. And she will feed them and breathe on them and wake the fire back to flame and set the water on, and the house will begin to stir. The travellers will wake slowly in their straw, stiff and warm and reluctant to the smell of the new fire and the small sounds of the morning. There will be something to break the fast, bread and ale, and what the pot will give. Taken quietly, for the morning talk is never the talk of the night. And then, one by one, they will gather their gear and settle what they owe, and step out into the washed grey morning, where the rain has stopped and the road lies clear and the long day's walking waits. And here is the gentle melancholy of the road, the thing that gives a night like this its particular sweetness. And you may rest in it without sorrow. They will part. The fellowship that the fire made will dissolve in the morning light as easily as it formed in the firelight, and the travellers will go their separate ways. The carter to his road, and the chapman to his villages, and the pilgrims to their shrine, and the soldier toward his uncertain home, and the boy out into his wide new world, each down their own road, into their own life. And they will very likely never meet again, any of them, in all their days. The company of the night is a thing of the night only. It is not meant to last. It asks nothing, holds nothing, grieves for nothing. It gives its warmth freely for the dark hours and lets go gladly in the morning. And there is a deep wisdom in that, a lightness that our own age, with its heavier holding on, might learn from. They were warm together when warmth was needed, and they part without grief when the need is past. And each carries on a little eased, for the night's shelter and the night's fellowship, out into the bright ongoing road. But all that is for the morning, and the morning is far off, and you need not go to it yet. Not for hours and hours yet. I show it to you only, so that you may rest in the deep ease of knowing that all is provided for, that the morning will come gently when it comes, that the fire will be woken and the bread will be broken and the road will be there, clear and dry, when the travellers are ready for it, and that none of it asks anything of you now, in the warm, deep middle of the night. There is nothing to wake for yet. There is nothing to rise for yet. The morning is keeping itself far off at the end of the dark, and it will wait, patient and grey and kind, for as long as you need to sleep. So let it wait. Let the morning keep. There is little now between you and the long good sleep, but the gentle letting go of the day, and all the warm dark hours of the night are yours, every one of them, to sink down into and rest. So let us make the descent together now, you and I, the last gentle sinking down into sleep, and let me do for you what the room itself did for the travellers, releasing your senses one by one, until there is nothing left to hold you up out of sleep at all. Let your mind go back into the alehouse one last time, and let it rest there among the sleepers, and let the room itself put you to sleep, sense by sense, the way it has put the whole company to sleep before you begin with what you can feel. The warmth, first of all, the deep soaked-in warmth of the room, the heat of the banked fire on the hearth, and the heat of the close-gathered sleeping bodies, all of it held in by the daubed walls and the heavy thatch. A heat with no sharpness in it, no blaze, only the soft, even all-surrounding warmth of a room that has been warm all evening and will hold its heat all night. Feel it on your skin, the way you feel the heat of your own bed around you now, and feel, beneath you, the give of the straw, the deep yielding hollow of it, the weight of the cloak drawn over, the rough comfort of a bed made of the simplest things. You are lying soft and warm in the dark. Nothing presses on you, nothing is required of you. Let the warmth and the softness take the whole weight of your body, so that you are held up by them entirely, and need hold yourself up not at all. Now let go of what you can smell, by noticing it first, and then letting it fade. The sweet wood smoke of the banked fire, faint now and thin, drifted up into the thatch overhead, the multy ghost of the ale, soaked into the very timbers of the house. The clean, cold trace of the night air, and under it the warm smell of the straw, and the close smell of the sleeping company, and the faint, far smell of the beasts in the yard. These are the smells of shelter, of indoors, of safety, and you need do nothing with them, but breathe them slow and deep, and let each breath go a little slower than the one before, until your breathing has fallen into the soft blended tide of the breathing room, the travellers and the alewife and you, all breathing together in the warmth. And now let go of what you can hear, last of all, for hearing is the last sense to loosen its hold as we fall asleep. So give it only the gentlest things to keep its fading watch over. The gentle breathing of the sleeping room, rising and falling, the settling of a coal in the banked fire, the shift and sigh of a beast in the yard, and far off, gentled by the thick walls into something near to silence, the last of the night wind in the thatch, dropping now toward the morning, and the thinning rain, and the run of the ford in the dark, all of it shut out, all of it held off, none of it able, anywhere, to reach you. Let these last sounds grow fainter and fainter as you sink, until they are very far away, until they are almost not there at all, until the watch your hearing keeps is so light and so faint that it is hardly a watch at all, hardly waking at all, almost, now, itself, asleep. And now there is nothing left to hold you. The warmth has taken your body, the slow breath has taken your breathing, the soft sounds have grown faint and far. The room is cozy and deep and warm around you, and the fire is kept, and the door is barred, and the whole wild night is shut out beyond it, and the company is all asleep around you, in the hush, the carter, and the chapman, and the pilgrims, and the boy. Every one of them sunk deep and safe into rest, and there is room there among them for you, and warmth and welcome on the far side of letting go. Let go now. There is nothing left to do. The road is behind you. The fire is kept. The morning will wait. Let the warmth take you, the way it has taken all of them, down and down and gently down, into sleep. There is nothing more now. The alehouse sleeps under the dropping wind and the thinning rain. The road sleeps, empty in the dark. The village sleeps, and the fields, and the whole wide country beyond. The small warm room holds its travellers safe, the fire kept low and faithful under its ash, the door barred against the night, the company gathered close and breathing slow, and you, who came down the muddy road so long ago this evening, cold and wet and a stranger. You are no longer a stranger and no longer cold. You were taken in and warmed and fed, and given a place by the fire and a place in the straw, and the long night has folded you in among the rest. And now there is room for you too, in the deep sleep that has taken the whole house down before you. So sink the last of the way. Let the warmth close gently over you. Let the soft breathing of the room become your own slow breathing. Let the last far sound of the wind grow fainter still and fainter until it is gone. There is nothing to hold to, and nothing to fear, and nothing to do, nothing at all, but to let the night have you. The way it has had this road, and these travellers, and this whole tired country, for as long as there have been roads and travellers, and the dark coming down at the close of the day. The fire is banked, the door is barred, the company is asleep. And all is well, all is well, all is well. In the small, warm alehouse, on the wild autumn night, 600 years ago, and tonight, and tonight. And now, wherever you are listening from tonight, and whatever the hour has become, while we have been away together down that old road, I hope the evening we have spent together has carried you somewhere kind and kept the darkness off you a while, the way the lit door once kept it off the travellers of the road. If these long journeys into other times are something you would like to keep close, you have only to subscribe, and the next lit window will be waiting for you on the night you need it. I think of the great scattered company of you, settling down into the same darkness all across the world tonight, each come a different road, all of you gathering toward the same quiet rest, the way the travellers once gathered toward the one warm fire. That is all. The fire is kept. You need do nothing more. Sleep well, stay warm, be kind to the people in your house, and I will see you in the next one. Good night.